YouTube, and we're streaming. So, City Clerk, let's do roll call.
Councilmember Soria,
Here.
Councilmember Carbasi,
Present.
Councilmember Arias,
Presente.
Councilmember Maxwell,
Present.
Councilmember Bredeville,
Here.
Vice President Esparza,
Present.
and President Chavez.
Here. All right. Next, we have the invocation by Father Alex Gaitan from St. Anthony Claret, and I believe City Clerk, he is online. So, Father Alex, everybody could please stand, and then we'll be doing the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge of Allegiance.
Father Alex, can you hear
Yes.
us? Did you want to do the invocation?
Yes. Dear God, this morning, we ask you to guide us. We ask you to put us in perspective of what we do in our lives as servants. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let us call to mind also, especially this day, all those Mexican nationals who are celebrating their independence and those that in this country come to look for a better future, all those descendants of Mexicans that are working hard day after day to keep building this nation. This invocation also is inspired by those who suffer war, victims of so much violence around the world. It helps now and then to step back and take a long view. The work is not only beyond our efforts, it is even beyond our vision. We accomplish in our lifetime only a tiny fraction of the magnificent enterprise that is God's work. Nothing we do is complete, which is a way of saying that the future always lies beyond us. No statement says all that could be said. No prayer fully expresses our faith. No confession brings perfection. No pastoral visit brings wholeness. No program accomplishes all our mission. No set of goals and objectives includes everything. This is what we are about. We plant the seeds that one day will grow. We water seeds that are already planted, knowing that they hold future promise. We lay foundations that will need further development. We provide yeast that produces far beyond our capabilities. We cannot do everything. And there is a sense of liberation realizing that. This enables us to do something and to do it very well. It may be incomplete, but it is a beginning, a step along the way, an opportunity for the Lord's grace to enter and do the rest. We may never see the end results, but that is the difference between the master builder and the worker. We are workers, no master builders. Servants, not messiahs. We are prophets of a future, not our own. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Father Alex, for also leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance and for that invocation. Appreciate that. City Clerk, could you read which items have been requested to be removed from the agenda or contested consent?
Yes, I'd like to make an announcement that we do have Spanish, Hmong, and Punjabi translators available on our Zoom. Also, I'm announcing that the November 18th and December 16th, 2021 regular City Council meeting has been canceled, and December 9th, 2021 regular City Council has been added to the agenda. We have posted a special meeting notice for the approval override of mayor's veto resolution regarding the PLA for citywide public works of improvement projects. And the following items are being requested to be removed from the agenda with no return date. Give me 1 second. Item 1D, as in dog, actions related to the third amendment to the Fresno Chandler Executive Airport Lease Agreement. Item 1K, approve a 3-year service agreement with Granicus. Item 1N, as in Nancy, resolution adopting the second amendment to FY 2022 salary resolution, amending Exhibits 13-1, Unit 13. Item 1O, resolution approving authority for a retroactive one-time payment for Unit 2. And item 1R, approve a first amendment to the Home Investment Partnerships Program Community Housing Development Organization Agreement. Those items have been removed from the agenda with no return date. The following items...
City Clerk, could
Yes.
you tell us who removed those?
I apologize. By Councilmember Arias.
Correct. I'm also, City Clerk, moving 1EE to the next council meeting so we can discuss the matter with the city manager and the planning director.
Councilmember Arias, would you consider on the Granicus item removing it for discussion, or could we have a conversation because we do have time deadlines?
Sure. We'll pull it for discussion.
Thank you.
Which item was that one?
I'm going, hold on, the
That was item...
1K.
1K.
Thank you. 1K. So
All right,
1K will be
so
moved...
City Clerk, just to make sure we get everything in order. So we got item 1D, 1K, that was just pulled for contested consent, 1N, 1O, 1R, removed, correct?
Yes, so item 1D, 1N, 1O, 1R, and 5D, closed session conference with labor negotiations, will be removed from the agenda,
And 1EE.
and 1EE.
1EE, removed. All right, now, do
And
we
the-
have items that are removed onto contested consent?
Yes, sir. And the following items are being pulled from consent calendar and moved to contested consent. Item 1L, a resolution authorizing the Parks Department to accept a grant in the amount of $125,000 for the State of California Department Office of Traffic Safety. Item 1P, actions pertaining to a deposit assistance program and landlord-tenant counseling services. Item 1R, approve a first amendment to the Home Investment Partnership. Actually, that one is being requested to be removed. So item 1L and 1P are being requested to be pulled to the consent calendar, contested consent calendar by Councilmember Maxwell. And item 1Y is being moved to the contested consent by Councilmember Arias. Approve a contract change order number 2 with Durham Construction, item 1Y.
Yeah.
EE is pulled to the next, off the agenda. Oh, for contested, I'm sorry.
Miguel?
Okay, let's make sure we get, so it was item 1EE, I think it was pulled for the next meeting, correct? Okay.
So set over for next meeting.
Yes, correct. Not on this meeting. All right, so for contested consent, City Clerk, I want to make sure we get them right so for the benefit of the public. We got 1L, 1K, 1P, 1R, and 1Y.
1L, 1K, 1P, 1Y, 1R was requested to be removed from the agenda.
Removed, okay. All right, that's what you had for the pre-show.
Yes.
All right, council colleagues, do we have any other items that you would like to pull? Let me go in order. Councilwoman Soria, any items?
Thank you. have a couple questions, but I did want to just, for the record, make sure to note that on 1CC, registering a recusal there. And then I did have I wanted to pull for discussion. I don't know if this one has been pulled, but 1I, 1L has been, 1P, and then 1AA, just for discussion.
1AA. Oh, and that item, actually, we won't be voting on it, Councilwoman Soria. I just wanted to introduce it today, so we won't be asking for a vote. If you want to discuss it, we could flesh out.
Yeah, I
some of
just
that.
had a couple questions, just for discussion. And then 2C, what was 2C?
2C is in car.
2C, I wanted to table
Okay.
for a future meeting. The reason that I wanted to table that item, we received thousands of pages or hundreds of pages just yesterday, I think at 10 a.m. I haven't had a chance to review them, so the documentation, the 1,300 pages that we received at 10 a.m. September 15th for item 2C.
We provided public comment periods for those items, so
No, I know, but the thing is that
From
all the final
staff or
stuff,
from the public?
well, all the documentation that we
oh,
needed.
you're saying about the EIR
Yeah, for the EIR. We just received it at 10 a.m. on the 15th. I can't possibly have gone through every single page, so.
Councilwoman Soria, I think this is the item that we had a very thorough conversation amongst ourselves in the back, and we
Closed session,
landed
yeah.
on and gave direction to staff to bring this forward. And I know that there's a sense of urgency because we don't want to hold up projects. I mean, is that something that we can discuss today and vet out? Because I'd like to kind of get this done.
Council, one suggestion. This is planned for a closed session today, too, which we wanted to hear before the open session item. You could possibly make the decision after the closed session?
Yeah, why don't we do that, Councilwoman Soria? Let's have the closed session
Okay.
discussion, and then we
I
can bring
just
it
want to
back.
make sure that for the record, I don't know if I will be prepared to vote on it, but that's fine.
Understand. Okay. And then when we come back, if there's the consensus or the will, I think we'll make the
Okay,
decision.
that's
on
fine.
that.
And I'm so sorry, the 1R, was that for contested or removed completely?
That
from
was
the-
removed.
Okay, I just wanted to notify whoever removed it that the buyer will not be able to close. So just wanted to make sure if there's
I
any
know
way
who
we could pull
removed
it
it.
for contested and get questions
Councilmember
answered.
Arias, I think you removed it.
We'll keep it uncontested.
Thank you.
All right, let's move it to the other column. Okay, all right. Councilwoman Soria?
And then the last thing that I just wanted to ask the administration, because I think 5D was pulled, which is closed session. Are there no updates? And so we need to pull that, or are there updates that?
So, I'm sorry. So while we're in negotiations, we put the item on every agenda just in case we need to come and ask council for something and we don't have to do a special meeting notice. So you'll see it on every agenda, but we
Okay.
don't need direction
Good.
from correct.
Okay,
So you'll
perfect.
see it on the next agenda too, and if we don't need anything, then we'll pull it off. But that way we don't have to do special meeting notices.
Okay, perfect. I was just wondering if there was no updates. So it seems like there isn't. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Carmasi?
Nothing to pull, just a clarifying question from the city attorney. City attorney, on item 1CC regarding card rooms, just to clarify, the first 31 tables are exempt from this policy.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Councilmember Arias, I think you already pulled your items unless you thought of new ones to pull in the last 2 minutes. All right, Councilmember Maxwell?
No more changes, Council President.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate that, Councilmember Maxwell. Councilmember Bredeville?
Yes, I'd like to pull item H, and I guess item P was already pulled. And I'd
Item 1H for discussion?
Yes, and 1P was already pulled, I believe. Correct?
1P,
Okay.
that's correct. That's
And
correct.
I'd like to register no vote on CC,
CC is in car?
as in card room harassment.
All right, register no vote. All right, Vice President, you have any items? Thank you for that. You look really smart with your new glasses, by the way. I really like those. All right, I'm going to be registering a recusal on item 1Q, the EOC item. So, City Clerk, if you could register that. Well, so with that, and then just for clarification to Councilwoman Soria's point, item 1AA, we will not be voting on it, but we will be having a brief discussion just to kind of flesh out some of the details. And I know this is something that's been in the works. I just wanted to bring it to the forefront and make sure that we don't forget about it. All right, so City Clerk, with that recusal of 1Q, you got that entered into the record?
I do. Do you want me to read it one last time? What's being removed? What's being
Yeah, let's do a quick
contested?
summary.
Okay. And Councilmember Soria, I didn't hear if you wanted 2C to be moved to the next day or just removed.
Well, we're going to discuss it in closed session
Okay.
and then come back out and make that decision.
Okay, what I have removed from the agenda is item 1D, as in dog, 1N, as in Nancy, 1O, 1EE, and 5D. What I have moved to contested consent, and this isn't in alpha order, is 1P, as in Paul, 1Y, 1I, as in igloo, 1AA, 1K, 1R, 1L, 1H is what I have moved for contested consent. The following items are being recused. Item 1Q by Council President Chavez, 1CC by Councilmember Soria, and Councilmember Bredeville has registered a no vote.
On CC, yeah.
Who moved?
I have a question, if I
Yes,
could.
Council President.
So, City Attorney, when items are pulled, first of all, we should know who's pulling them. Do you have to state why the items, they can just, anybody can pull
Are you
20
talking
items
about
every week?
Removing from the agenda or pulled for contested consent?
Removing items from the agenda.
The council rules provide that any council member can remove an item from the agenda, don't have to give a reason, and then it stays off the agenda unless there's a motion, second, and majority vote to keep it on.
Okay.
Also, it provides that the sponsor of an item has a right to pull it off the agenda, period.
Okay. Thank you.
That answer your question, Councilmember Bredeville? All right, so with that, is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved. Okay.
Second.
All right,
You go.
motion made
I'll
by
second her.
Councilmember Carbasi.
I have one thing.
Yes,
The
Councilmember
PLA, I would like to pull for discussion as well.
That is not on consent.
That's a
So that
special
we-
meeting.
that's a
We're
special
going to be
meeting. Okay,
discussing
just
it
wanna make
anyway.
sure.
Yeah, city manager wanted some time also to articulate his points again. Again. All right, so, all right, with that, motion has been made by, I believe, Councilwoman Soria, seconded by Councilmember Carbasi. Is there any opposition? Seeing none, motion carries. We approve the agenda. So now we will go on and, oh my God, there's no ceremonial presentations this week. Wow. All right, let's go on to councilmember comments and reports, and we will go like we usually go in numerical order. Councilwoman Soria, you're first.
Perfect. Thank you, Council President. So I'm just going to make a couple comments. So this coming October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. I wanted to take a moment of privilege to speak up and out on an issue that has come to light in this building. Writing these words today took a lot out of me. I had to stop several times because of the knots in my stomach and the throat and the anxiety it has caused. For far too long, I myself have been afraid to speak up because of the emotional and psychological abuse I have been subjected to by one of my colleagues over the last few years. His baseless allegations and false comments are in retaliation of the number of times he has felt that I wasn't on his side and against him, like during the process of erecting In God We Trust in this chamber, or when I didn't vote for him for council vice president, to name a few. I've been afraid to speak out because he has intentionally engaged in a witch hunt. I know by me speaking out today, it will only make it worse. Mark my words. But today I say no more. I want to be a voice for others who suffer from abusive bullies, Today, I stand up for all women, including men and children who have been victims of some form of abuse, in particular domestic abuse victims. Gary Bredeville, over his tenure on this council, has purported to be tough on crime and a supporter of domestic violence victims. His hypocrisy is disgusting and laughable. Gary has proven to be a farce and complicit to the abuse he has not only covered up, but rewarded. I am sure that over the last 12 months, you have heard him repeatedly say and claim to say there's a stench in this building. Let me tell you, the only stench in this building is coming from his office. For the record, over the last 2 years, Gary Bredeville has knowingly harbored a criminal in his office by employing him and paying him top dollar for his position as council assistant. Let me say that again. Over the last 2 years, Gary Bredeville has knowingly harbored a criminal in his office. He protected a felon that was convicted of not 1, but 5 felonies, which included corporal injury, child abuse and endangerment, and assault by means likely to cause great bodily injury. The criminal he protected choked and threatened to kill the victim. Instead of ensuring justice was served and that the criminal in his office was held accountable, he decided to show up to trial on his behalf and not the victim. This is despicable and painful for any woman who has ever been abused. It is this type of recklessness and use of power by leaders like Gary that continue to perpetuate the cycle of abuse that happens to women and children in our community. Gary made it acceptable to abuse women and children over the last 2 years without any consequences. The question I have today is, where is the outrage on what has transpired in this building? Where are our local leaders that every year show up to the Marjorie Mason Center fundraisers to say they support victims of domestic violence, yet they sit silent on the issue that one of our colleagues harbored a criminal, an abuser, in his council office? Where are those that claim to be tough on crime? Why aren't you holding Gary accountable? How is it that a council member is allowed to protect and reward an abuser of women and children for 2 years without any consequences? What kind of message is this council willing to send today? Do we truly stand with victims of domestic violence? Or will you stay silent and perpetuate the victimization of women and children? Remember that silence is deadly. I am no longer staying silent. I personally can be part of a willful cover-up, but it's not enough for me to speak up. We need to hear from the mayor of this city to see if this is a type of behavior of city employees would be tolerated. Ladies and gentlemen, now we know the stench is coming from one office. I'm calling upon Gary to make the taxpayer whole by repaying with his campaign money the money he paid out to his criminal employee. I'm calling for Gary to donate the remaining of his campaign funds to the Marjorie Mason Center to ensure that women and children who continue to be victimized get the support and resources they need to end the cycle of violence. It's not until brave women and men in power stand up and say enough is enough that we help prevent this cycle of violence. Today, I do just that. To the victims of domestic violence listening today, I say to you, I see you. I care about you. You are worthy, brave, and strong enough to overcome what is in front of you. I'm done, Council President. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Soria. Councilmember Carbasi? Oh, he's not here. Councilmember Arias?
Thank you, Council President. And I want to apologize up front to the public and those employees in the room today for taking time during the council meeting to address the actions of one of our peers. Unfortunately, as difficult as the subject is, it's not appropriate for closed session. It's very clear that the law doesn't allow us to discuss this matter in closed session, and there is no censorship process to address this matter, so it must be done in open session. As a child who grew up with domestic violence, it pains me to give any abuser or their enabler any mind and attention. But as elected leaders, we cannot look the other way, no matter the amount of personal and political attacks that it will expose us to. Silence only allows abusers and their enablers to continue their behavior. The recent actions, which were made public by our local media, warrant our council's action immediately, given the dangerous environment that was created for our other employees. For the last 2 years, Mr. Bredeville's irresponsible actions have created legal and financial liability to our taxpayers. The last council, the last mayor, the current council, and this mayor, we have all attempted to manage them by ignoring his reprehensible actions, as we all know that he has no interest in leading this city or helping us improve. Simply ignoring his behavior hasn't worked. His most recent action forces this council to spend more time of the public's valuable time managing his behavior, legislating new safety precautions for our employees, and protecting the financial interests of our taxpayers. During my tenure, several council meetings have been forced to go into recess because of Mr. Bredeville's repeated failure to manage his emotions, becoming unhinged. That's the primary reason I voted against allowing him to carry a concealed weapon to this chamber. He insults his colleagues, members of the public in person, press conferences, and on social media without taking any responsibility for inciting violence and division and making us targets of his followers. He's pursued efforts to terminate the rental housing inspection program and to eliminate its budget, simply to benefit his own personal financial interests, so as to exempt himself as a landlord from the fines that apply to everyone else. He spearheaded reckless misinformation campaign during a pandemic that has cost the lives of thousands, including 3 city employees, with no regard for the truth. He's collaborated with extremists with a well-documented history of domestic violence, trespassing, and harassment, placing the safety of us, including my own kids, at risk. He's worked and encouraged his campaign donor to draft baseless claims against the city and shared confidential information from closed session, a clear violation of the Brown Act and his own ordinance. If that wasn't enough, and in spite of his attempted cover-up, it has come to light that he's been engaged in empowering a criminal, engaging in cover-up, and using public funds as hush money. In January 2017, Mr. Bredeville not only hired someone with a troubling history of domestic violence and reckless behavior. After a criminal act occurred and resulted in 7 felony charges, instead of terminating the contractor as his employment contract required, Mr. Bredeville kept him on salary, gave him raises, and made him the highest paid employee amongst his peers, who are primarily women in this building. Mr. Bredeville chose to protect this person for 29 months, misusing paid and COVID leave to keep them on payroll. The contractor also intentionally violated a criminal restraining order with the consent and knowledge of his supervisor, Mr. Bredeville. For years, Mr. Bredeville has spoken against domestic violence, called for stronger criminal laws, support 3 strikes policies for everyone else. So why not his own staff? Why are they above the law? Why testify to keep somebody from being held accountable with the laws that he has for decades proposed, supported, and advocated for their passage? The evidence is clear. The protected individual had been engaging in illicit activities through the use of fake social media accounts at the explicit direction of Mr. Bredeville and funded by taxpayers. Taxpayer funds were used to buy the contractor's silence against Mr. Bredeville, which is a corrupt act that embezzled city and federal resources. In short, this abuse of power demands that this council take action by approving the revisions to the Transparency Act that will limit future actions by Mr. Bredeville to reward with financial resources of this city any criminal acts. The numerous violations of city policy, ethical standards, and the cover-up that he's intentionally engaging demand that this council consider revoking Mr. Bredeville's committee assignments and not select them for any leadership role in the upcoming year. I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you, Councilmember Arias. Councilmember Maxwell.
Yes, thank you, Council President. Good morning. I also wanted to take a moment to briefly address the recent actions of one of my colleagues. This is an extremely uncomfortable and difficult conversation to have, and yet, as I've come to find over the years, those are usually the conversations most worthy of being had. It's not unusual for council members to go back and forth with each other on this dais about controversial policies, or even for our conversations to sometimes become very heated. That is the very nature of this job, and I think we all have thick skins and are able to take it on the chin. However, it is another thing entirely to come up here every single week and make personal and unfounded attacks and accusations on members of this administration and members of this council and their families. For many months and for some many years, we've sat up here and let Councilmember Bredeville go on fantastical tirades about how every single leader in our city, excluding, of course, himself, is a, and I quote, weak, feckless, spineless, corrupt, power-hungry, disgraced tyrant. And we continue to allow him to collect additional media headlines because we know for him that's more important than passing actual policies that would help real Fresno families. But today we stop to hold a mirror up to our colleague because it's time he sees that the very same accusations he throws around haphazardly reflect nobody more accurately than himself. It's time our colleague sees he sits on a legislative dais and not a judge's bench. That our words on this dais have real-world consequences, that our actions, behavior, and sentiments are adopted by the general public, as well as our employees here at City Hall, and that violent delights have violent ends. Let me point to just one example by using one of my colleagues' favorite words, hypocrisy. I'm sure every single member of this council and administration has been called a hypocrite by Councilmember Bredeville. We also know from Councilmember Bredeville's social media posts that he likes to think of himself as the tough-on-crime council member that won't back down when it comes to doing the right thing. One of the local issues I've been a strong advocate of during my time on council has been that of supporting Advance Peace, a brilliant nonprofit organization with a strong record of reaching out to disadvantaged youth, many of whom have never committed a single crime or been convicted of a crime in their life, but may be at risk of a violent lifestyle, and offers them a chance at a better life. They do this by taking disadvantaged kids out of their environment for field trips, educational seminars, workforce mentoring, and providing them with a small stipend in order to help them elevate themselves out of the lifestyles they found themselves born into. Now, this very same organization has been strongly opposed by Councilmember Bredeville because, according to him, this is just rewarding and paying criminals. Again, many of the folks outreach to have never been convicted of a single crime before. But my colleague, again, has passed judgment on them from his judge's bench and deemed them all criminals, not worthy of saving, not worth investing into. Meanwhile, I've come to find out that Councilmember Bredeville has been employing someone convicted of 5 violent felonies, including domestic violence and child endangerment. Additionally, Councilmember Bredeville knew about the arrest and charges this individual faced for the last 2.5 years. And what did he do? He didn't fire him. He didn't punish him. He kept him employed, and over the course of 2.5 years, paid him nearly $250,000 of taxpayer money. So the question everybody should be asking themselves is why? Why is it so wrong to try and elevate disadvantaged kids out of their lifestyles, to reduce crime in our city and save lives? But it's okay for Councilmember Bredeville to spend $250,000 of taxpayer money to his employee who has been convicted of 5 violent felonies by a court of law. And there's only one good answer, and that is that Mr. Bredeville himself is hypocritical, that he's only tough on crime when it comes to certain communities, that he does back down when it comes to protecting abusers, that he persecutes the weak because it makes him feel strong. I expect Mr. Bredeville will only attack me and my colleagues more for speaking out, but enough is enough. So it's time to put your money where your mouth is, Mr. Bredeville, and pay back that $250,000 to a local domestic violence charity. Yield the rest of my time.
Thank you, Councilmember Maxwell. Councilmember Bredeville.
Wow, where do I begin with all of the lies and the mistruths? You keep saying that I've employed somebody who was convicted of 5 felonies. That's an outright lie to begin with. This person was charged with domestic violence. I believe in the rule of law. I believe in the ability to due process, the presumption of innocence. And last week, he went to trial. He pleaded no contest. And as a result, I said, you can no longer work here. And he submitted his resignation. This happened 2.5 months ago, and he was waiting for due process. He has been an exemplary employee here for nearly 5 years, and I gave him the opportunity to have his day in court. He was not convicted of anything over the last 2.5 years. So you're saying that he was convicted and I was employing a convicted felon is an outright lie, and you all know it. Where do I begin with all of the lies? Collaborating with extremists, helping Mr. Tutelian write a claim against the city, all of the outright lies. As I was listening to all of the lies, all I could think of is why people never want to get involved in politics is very clear. So I've been personally and viciously attacked by this corrupt, and I'm using the word correctly, a gang of 4. I'm sure the 4th will be speaking shortly. And let me tell you why and give you the real facts. My prior employee had a court trial last week, and he pled no contest to the majority of domestic violence charges. I then informed him that he could no longer work for me because he had his day in court, and he resigned immediately. He received absolutely no severance, and though he had 4 more months to be vested in his retirement plan, he lost his retirement plan. And now he may lose his freedom. And these are the tragic consequences for engaging in such terrible and inexcusable behavior. There is never any excuse, no justification for domestic violence, or violence for that matter, ever. But I do believe when someone is charged with a crime, and perhaps some of the people up here may ultimately get charged with a crime, I would assume that they want due process. I assume that they would want presumption of innocence. But when the judicial process is completed, there needs to be accountability, and there was in this case. But accountability is not what the Gang of 4 are interested today. No, the loss of the man's job, his retirement, his potential freedom is not enough for this Gang of 4, and it is a Gang of 4. In a blatant effort to attack me because of my ongoing calling them out for their corruption, exposing it, which I've done for 2 years, and it isn't some fallacy. We've done it right here on the dais. It's been in full view of the people. They attack me. That's fine. I'm a big person. I entered this arena. I knew what I entered. I can handle their attacks. It's not a problem. But what is truly disgusting to me today is that they now have caused more pain and suffering on the real victim, the employers, my employee's significant other, their child, and other children in their family. And they did this for political reasons to try to score some cheap political points against me. These are innocent people whose pain should not be exploited just to attack your political opponents. But it's not surprising because this corrupt Gang of 4 have displayed their unethical, immoral behavior over the past 2.5 years, and I've called it out. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to continue to call it out. Just this week, some in the media reported on developer Cliff Tutelian's written claim, by the way, Mr. Arias, that I didn't write, that the ringleader of this Gang of 4, Mr. Arias, attempted to extort a bribe for $12,000 in donations and told Mr. Tutelian, these are not me saying, this is Cliff Tutelian saying, that he had to, quote, pay to play. Mr. Tutelian wrote in his claim that Arias told him he is, quote, cheap and needs to learn how to contribute like others if he expects help, end quote. Well, Mr. Tutelian apparently didn't pay up, and the corrupt gang killed his project, stating Mr. Tutelian had too many delays in the completion of this project. However, in contrast to other developers like Terrence Frazier, Councilmember Esmeralda Suria's fiance, they get treated quite differently down here at City Hall. He has projects called the South Stadium, the Berkeley Building, and these projects have been delayed 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, and yet the projects are allowed to continue. How interesting. We also know that only 2 months ago during the budget process, this corrupt gang of four placed $5 million in the budget in order to give $4 million to Terrence Frazier when the city did not owe him 1 penny, not 1 penny. That taxpayer money would have paid off Frazier's $2.3 million in debts he owed because he doesn't pay his debts, and then fronted him another $2 million, making he and Councilmember Esmeralda Soria instant millionaires, courtesy of the taxpayers that didn't owe him not 1 penny, not one. And of course, the day before the gang was going to give him millions of dollars, Mr. Arias had a fundraiser at Mr. Frazier's house, raising thousands of dollars for his campaign the night before. How special. These are all facts. But why didn't Frazier get the money? Because frankly, the day before, the council received a letter from District Attorney Lisa Smithcamp that I'm holding in my hand, indicating that she was investigating certain council members for violating the Brown Act, related to what? Granite Park, and advised them not to pass anything related to Granite Park. So what do swamp rats do when the light comes on? The next day, Arias and the others removed the $5 million they put in the budget, which negated the $4.3 million they planned to give Frazier the next day. How convenient. Then over the last month, what did we witness up here on the dais? The corrupt gang of four were at it again. This time it was harassing and shaking down Kyle Kirkland, CEO of Club One Casino, as he tried to reopen at Granite Park because these council members shut him down during the pandemic. They took away 20 of his tables, thereby refusing to let all of his employees return. Instead, they insisted he have a community meeting at the 11th hour when they were supposed to approve his opening. They told him to come back in 90 days to see if he was, as Tyler Maxwell said, a, quote, good actor, end quote, despite the fact that Mr. Kirkland has been operating at Club One for 12 years in downtown Fresno with a spotless record. For Mr. Maxwell, who wouldn't know a private sector job or business if it hit him on the head, he was the one who said, we'll see if you're a good actor. Then the corrupt gang, again led by Tyler Maxwell, approved skimming 12% of the sales tax revenue from Club One and mandating it could only be used within 1,000 feet of Club One for a park that could only ultimately benefit Terrence Frazier. So $120,000. But that was not good enough for the gang. Miguel Arias made a motion, not 12%, 50% of the sales tax, $600,000 for his buddy Terrence Frazier should be skimmed off of the Club One sales tax revenue. Rather than going into the general fund and paying for police, it should go to his friend. Thankfully, that motion didn't pass, but the 12% did. By the way, if they had truly wanted to use money for parks, Measure P was certainly available to pay for it. In contrast, again, how others get special treatment, Mr. Frazier just held a concert at Granite Park with approximately 12,000 people, many constituents complaining about parking in the neighborhoods. But the corrupt gang didn't call for Mr. Frazier to hold a community meeting. They didn't haul him before the city council 4 times like they did Kyle Kirkland. They didn't attempt to skim 12% or 50% of his sales tax revenue. Different rules for different people for the corrupt gang of 4. Residents in the city of Fresno, I could go on and on. I could spend the next half hour talking about the corrupt actions of these 4. The facts are this. City Hall is a swamp full of sleazy and unethical, if not outright criminal behavior. That's why we received a letter from DA Smithcamp, and that's why there's all investigating going on. There are accusations by Mr. Tatalian of extortion, attempts at bribery, and pay-to-play schemes. Now, either he's lying or Arias is lying. Somebody's lying. And I know who's a pathological liar, and it isn't Mr. Tatalian. Certain businesses, people are treated very differently than others with ties to the corrupt gang of 4. We've seen it here over and over. As I said at the outset of my comments, I will continue to speak out against all the stench and the corruption at City Hall, all the lies, all the personal attacks on me that we witnessed today, that more are coming next, that are complete bald-faced lies. The citizens of Fresno deserve honest government. They deserve elected leaders who represent them, and not their pals, not their constituents, not those they're engaged to, none of them. Towards that effort, I will not back down. I will only double down on exposing the stench. And then you know what? I'm going to triple down again. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, Vice President Esparza.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I think I'd rather talk about Beautify Fresno or my upcoming town hall, how the Grizzlies are headed to the postseason, go Grizzlies, or playfully gloat about the governor's victory on Tuesday night. But instead, I do feel compelled to comment, especially considering the lack of regret and remorse on the part of my colleague that he just exhibited. I think perhaps one of the most troubling components of this unfortunate revelation out of the D6 council office is the feedback I've received from employees who work in the building, particularly in our second floor council offices, and particularly from women. As the council vice president, folks have not been shy about voicing their thoughts to the council leadership. Women wondering how something like this could happen, how they could unknowingly be forced to work alongside someone with this well-documented history of troubling behavior, especially in our very tight council quarters back here. Women wondering how our system of background checks to work in this building somehow failed us. And everyone questioning the judgment of an elected official who knowingly welcomed this employee into our building. The whole thing, to me, is dripping with hypocrisy. During this pandemic, Mr. Bredeville has berated something as benign as our code enforcement phone number, framing it as a snitch hotline, in his words, when in reality, it was a way for residents to communicate to us who in our community was jeopardizing the public health. It was another tool utilized to save many lives here in Fresno. The irony of this is that the whole time Mr. Bredeville ranted and raved about this alleged snitch hotline, he was effectively harboring someone who legitimately needed to be told on. I won't sit up here and exaggerate the situation like Mr. Bredeville tends to do on a regular basis by calling this corruption or what have it, but it is clear to me and to the public that between his disdain for the COVID efforts of our code enforcement division and his willingness to hire and pay someone with a documented history of alcoholism and abuse, that Mr. Bredeville is in the business of protecting those who break the laws that he does not agree with. I want to communicate to the residents of Fresno that much like many of the positions taken by the District 6 council member, that these particular actions do not reflect the values of our city. And I'll be proud to vote on the item 1DD today in order to mitigate the chances that it ever occurs again. As it turns out, there has been a stench here in City Hall all along. We just only figured out where it was coming from.
All right. I'll go last, as it's tradition for the council president. First off, I want to apologize to our employees and folks that are having to listen. I just personally feel this is not the venue to address these issues. I think this is the people's business. We got a high crime rate. We got potholes. We got streets that need to be repaved. However, we do have elected officials, First Amendment, constitutional rights. I understand that. All I will ask my colleagues is in the future, if maybe a press conference would be more appropriate to, engage in whatever concerns that you might have outside of city business. Respectfully requesting that for future. I do want to thank our city staff for the event yesterday. Today is Mexican Independence Day. The mayor, the council went out there yesterday and we did the flag raising. Great event. Special thank you to the communications department within the administration, Santaya, Fabiola. They did a great job of not just coordinating the event right outside, but also the one at Eaton Plaza. I know the mayor calls it something different than Eaton Plaza. It's like the flag convention area, but I just got a lot of really good feedback from our residents, and they were really happy and really proud to have the mayor out there, the council, and everybody really celebrating Mexican Independence Day. I also want to thank Mark Standra for coordinating the event that we'll be having on Saturday, which is a big cleanup over by Story Elementary. We're working with our community folks there. Father Alex that came and spoke, actually, his church is in that neighborhood, and he's been very helpful in working with our community and coordinating some of those events. So we'll be out there, and I just really want to say I appreciate the work that's being done out there, and I hope we can have a couple more from now until the weather starts getting a little bit colder. On that note, I'll close by just, really thanking the residents that came out yesterday. Apparently there was a large contingency from Southeast that came to the festivities, and I just want them to know that I appreciate them coming out and supporting the city. I think that was something that was very important for them to come and voice that. I think a couple got interviewed on some of the media outlets. So with that, I will conclude our council comments. City Manager, did you have? Oh, Councilmember Carbasi. You disappeared a little while ago. I just was wondering if you went to a restroom break.
My apologies, Council. No, I just wanted to say today is Yom Kippur. I want to recognize that for all our Jewish residents. Look, I listened very attentively, and I want to echo the Council President's comments. I've been here for 2 years. I still feel like I have one foot out like a resident, and I remember coming to this chamber and looking in awe of what we get to do. And I think it's a really great thing. It's a great service that we have. And I'm sorry if I'm rambling, but I never really thought I'd see what I saw today. Obviously, we have a lot of work to do as a group. There's a lot of hurt. I've never found that disagreeing with someone politically is enough for me to, shut the door. But I'm really sorry for the victims here, because they got caught in the middle of a crossfire, and I wish that hadn't happened. And I don't know what to say. I hope the public isn't watching. It's not good to see this kind of display. So that's all I have to say.
All right, thank you.
Council
City Manager?
Council President,
Oh,
I
Vice
want to follow
President?
up on both your comments and, to some degree, Councilmember Carbasi's comments. I appreciate the sort of reestablishment of decorum in your commentary, but I would hope that every Thursday we might hear that after hearing those types of rants from certain members on this council. So I don't like that you selectively picked today to finally say something about that and do something about it. I'd appreciate some consistency in the future.
I totally agree, 100%. It had never been a problem where more than one council member said that. But when it starts to become a theme, I think, at the end of the day, we want to make sure we handle the people's business. And I totally understand what you're saying, Vice President, and you can expect that from me and that consistency in the future.
Thank you.
And
Yes, Councilmember Rocha.
yeah, and I would like the same consistency as well, Council President. When we do things up here, when council members treat constituents poorly, when they, for bogus reasons, make up reasons why they shouldn't approve things, I'd like to see people speak up about that. When there are all kinds of things that take place that people up here know are wrong, I would like people to speak up, because I can tell you, Council President, as long as I'm in this building, I'm going to speak up on the stench and the lies and the corruption. And it's pervasive, and I've outlined just some of it. And I think most of us know that it's going on, and it has been going on for quite some time. So again, decorum is great, but truth is what is needed here, and honesty is what is needed here. Not much of that was portrayed today amongst the corrupt gang of four. But I can tell you, I'm going to continue to speak up, Mr. President, regardless of who sits in that chair.
I fully expect, this to not be the last conversation of this. All I ask is let's try to be respectful. I think if we want to engage in a policy conversation, that's great. But I really do think that it makes the city as a whole look bad when we're up here fighting. And, you guys know that I'm a pragmatist. I don't like that type of back and forth. Some of you do, or maybe don't, but feel like it's necessary.
Council President?
Let's try to just maintain that.
I
Yes.
know I kind of walked in when you guys were having the conversation, so I didn't hear all of it, but I think that I understand your concern, but a lot of it has only been coming from one side, and it's not fair. And I'm tired of it. I'm tired of, yes, the lack of decorum, the lack of disrespect. I have never experienced that until the last couple years. I've worked with a variety of council members from different perspectives. I've always been respectful. I've never called any names. Now we are portrayed as a gang. So now Mr. Bredeville is like, you know, calling us essentially criminals, which is ridiculous. And it's that kind of disrespect that has been coming from District 6 that causes all of this to feel. And so I'm just tired of it. I'm tired of feeling that constant attack instead of focusing on the real policy issues and discussions that we should be focused on. It's unfortunate. And, you know, he will say he'll triple down. That is his style. He wants to, you know, triple down, quadruple down, whatever he wants to do. It's his prerogative, but it's not fair that when he's making all these baseless allegations or attacking folks that you haven't stepped in either as president. And I think that that's not cool. I think that I hear you, you're going to apply it now evenly to everyone, but it hasn't happened. It has been from one individual, and so now all of a sudden other people start speaking up, and now it's become a problem. So that's where I am concerned.
I 100% agree with you, Councilwoman Soria, and maybe that's been on my end, where we do have a First Amendment right by everybody. And let me just be clear so there's no interpretation. I believe everybody on this dais that's elected is an equal member of this body, right? The mayor has his role, the council members have their role. The part that you know, for me, and this had never happened before, where we now have spent, you know, over an hour discussing differences between colleagues, which is okay, but at the same time, I've just gotten text messages from constituents that are talking about the high crime rate, you know, the things that need to get fixed in the city, and for them to see us spending this amount of time with this, I'm not saying that I, you know, don't think, you know, folks have points. All I'm saying is let's try in the future to focus it on something that we can actually do, because I really don't think that we're going to convince each other of our differences of opinion, whether they're political, whether they're policy, or just differences in general. And all I'm asking for is for us to refocus on, you know, doing the people's business. And I think if we do that, all the other stuff will play out however it plays out, because we're just inherently political positions. That I totally understand that. But when we're here today, I mean, I'd love for us to focus on getting this job done. And this is what I really want us to focus on. Councilmember Bredeville, close it off.
Yes, I want to also be clear, because when Councilmember Arias was the council president, I had several run-ins with him trying to cut me off from the microphone or playing a video. And we had to have the city attorney intercede on that to understand that I am as equal as anyone else. And you may not like what I'm saying because it exposes some things that are unpleasant about what you're doing, but I'm going to say it. And I want to be clear for the next president. If we need to have that go-around time, we will, because I'm going to speak just like everyone else has an opportunity to speak. I will not be cut off, and nor would I expect anyone else to be cut off. And I would defend anyone else's right to speak as well. So I think it's very clear that while we see things very differently, and we do, everybody has a right to express their point of view, just as we've done today. I don't agree with what was said. People don't agree with me, but this is still America, and there have been efforts at times to shut off people who have a majority and they don't want the minority to speak. It's not going to be allowed. I'm not going to put up with it. So hopefully it doesn't come to that in the future.
Council President.
I can't wait for the next president.
Council President, if I may.
Councilmember Arias.
Having been in your shoes, I know the balance that you're trying to achieve, which is impossible at times. So I feel empathy for the position you're in today. But I do want to reinforce that personally, I'm not here discussing the council member's private business, his private, his private actions. this is the people's business because it was a city employee paid for by city tax dollars working alongside other city employees in which we're all in tight, quarters back there. So it is a people's business, what was discussed today from my purview. And I want to reinforce that I have no intention to spend time on this dais discussing people's private relationships, their private endeavors, their private businesses. That is private. But this is the city's business. It is a taxpayer's business. And if we had some other process or venue to do so, we would take advantage of it. I appreciate your suggestion on a press conference, but I think the local media has quite a bit of more important matters related to crime, the housing crisis, and homelessness to cover. So I just want to empathize in the position you're in and reinforce that I agree. If there's a consensus and agreement amongst us that we pull back on personal attacks of each other, personal attacks of members of this public or applicants before the city, we should honor that. But we should all honor it and not allow one person to destroy anybody's reputation on this dais without being redirected, at least, as council president has always done, extra respectfully.
Can I suggest an arm wrestling competition or a grudge match? And
I've already won.
All right, let's. You guys all know I respect every single one of my colleagues, and even though we don't agree on everything, I really do. I have a great reverence for this place, for the institution, and I think we all want to make sure that we focus on that. So with that, let's move on to consent calendar and unscheduled communication.
Council President?
Yes. Oh, I'm so sorry,
No,
City
you're-
Manager. Your comments.
Yes,
Apologize.
thank you. I had different comments. but
You have a
having
First
this-
Amendment right too, by the way.
Right. Thank you. I think my comments today are just to the city, to the student employees of the city. You're going to hear about this. You're going to be engaging with the community. Discussions will be had. The mayor and I talk about it all the time. I need you to stay focused on the mission. Serve the residents, provide the service, deliver the infrastructure. These things will happen. These things will occur. But don't lose faith in why you're here and what we're here to do. This makes it tough, but just don't give up on us. I ask you to stay committed to what we need to do. The residents of this city are depending on us to deliver service. The businesses of this community are relying on us to deliver service. Everyone's relying on us to deliver infrastructure. We are in a difficult time. Certainly, we see the light at the end of the tunnel. There are things we have to do still, but don't let this distract you from what we got to get done. This is the system of government we have, as the council president says. Everybody gets the opportunity to kind of share their perspective, but we can't let it get us off track and off pace of what we need to do. So I ask you today to stay committed to it, stay focused on it. You'll meet with people today. You'll meet with residents. You'll meet with businesses. Just give them the greatest service you can. Try and get this out of your mind. Don't let this distract you. Again, I respect the fact that they want to share these thoughts with each other, and that's just the system we have, and we have to accept that. But thank you for every day showing up. Thank you every day for putting the residents first, the businesses first, and the things we need to do first. And so with that, thank you to all the city employees who show up every day to make good things happen for this city, and let's keep doing it. Thank you. That's my comments.
The mayor's here. Oh, mayor. Oh.
Oh no, I've been watching
the closer.
Watching from my office intently. I just want to make a few comments, but first, there is one thing. A question was asked, I think earlier by Esmeralda, Councilmember Soria, about wanting to hear from the mayor on this issue. And part of the challenge that we have from the mayor's office or the manager's office is the fact is we have a bifurcated system of government, right? It's a strong mayor form of government. And so the city manager oversees employees within the city. The city attorney oversees certain employees in the city. And then we have city council members that employ staff assistants, and you oversee those staff assistants. There was a time, I believe, when staff assistants were actually under the city manager's, not direction, but authority and responsibility in terms of if there was going to be hiring, disciplinary actions, anything of that nature. And so the reason for that was for the purpose of consistency. Because if a department director is handling a personnel matter in this manner, and then perhaps in a council district, a personnel matter is being handled in a different manner, then it does create some of these issues that was talked about earlier today. There is consistency generally between the city attorney's office because we work closely with them on personnel actions. And so my recommendation would be to this body that we go back to that system to where the city manager does have some form of authority in terms of personnel management, not give direction or anything of that nature to those staff assistants. That's totally up to you. But anytime there is any type of misconduct that gets reported or a investigation administratively or criminally, that would fall under the purview of the city manager, just like it does with all the other employees in the city of Fresno. And I think that would give us that consistency that we're looking for as a city. Enough said on that. And I do want you to know I learned about this incident when I too read it in one of our local papers, like many of you on the dais. That's the first I had heard about it, was not aware of it. Same with my city manager as well.
Mayor, if I may, I would
Yes, sir.
be open to that conversation, but I first have to know, would you have taken the same action that Mr. Bredeville took, or would you have terminated this employee if he was under your purview?
I can tell you that in my former role as a director in the police department, we bifurcated investigations so that if criminal misconduct was alleged against an employee, they would be placed on administrative leave. Or light duty if it was a minor charge, misdemeanor charge, something like that. If it's a felony, then certainly they would have been placed on administrative leave. Then there would have been the criminal investigation that occurred outside of the city, and then there is an administrative investigation that occurs within the city, either in-house or contracted out. And then, depending on what the outcome of the administrative investigation would determine the outcome of that employee. Seldom, if ever, did I wait for a criminal case to go through the process, because that could take 2, 3, 4 years in some matters. So there is an administrative process that occurs separately and apart from the criminal. And so that is what I would do as the mayor of this city. That's what the city manager would do. That's what the conversations we've had with the city attorney over the years. There may be a time when you need to wait for that criminal case to proceed, but in most cases, we bifurcated the two and took administrative action prior to the outcome of the criminal.
All right. Does that conclude your comments, Mayor? Did you?
No, I want to talk about some good things.
All right.
There are some good things.
Sneak those in.
I did want to say thank you to the council, to my staff. I wanted to say a special thanks to Fabiola Ramirez and Taya Rose, Sarah Bourne, John Ellis for putting together the ceremony yesterday that many of you attended here at City Hall, the flag raising. And yes, we finally got to use the flagpoles at Eaton Plaza for the celebration, and the stage with folklorical dancers, violinists, Mr. Contreras, who played for us, and some others. And it was a really good celebration of Mexican independence, 200th anniversary for Mexican independence. And then yesterday evening had the opportunity to, along with Councilmember Maxwell, to go to Fresno State, along with the consulate, and to celebrate that. We are taking that into this weekend, and Councilmember Chavez, Council President Chavez's district. We're going to have a Beautify Fresno event that's going to occur on Peach between Butler and Jensen. And that will involve Univision, the Central California Hispanic Chamber, as well as our consulate. And that cleanup will be geared towards a lot of the Spanish-speaking community and we hope to have over 100 people out there cleaning up Southeast Fresno. So look forward to interacting tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. with the community on that cleanup. And again, look forward to further discussions today at the council. So thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you, Mayor. All right, let's move on to consent and unscheduled communication. The clerk read for the record items that have been removed and then items that we still have on contested consent. Before we do that, I'm going to take public comment on all consent, closed session, and unscheduled communication. City Clerk, do we have some folks teed up? Or did we scare them away?
No, we actually have a few, but on the scheduled communication, we have Mary Padilla. And I'm not sure, Mary Padilla, if you are on, please raise your electronic hand. Otherwise, the first speaker we have is Stephen Ayala.
All right, Mr. Stephen, you'll have 2 minutes. Floor is yours.
Stephen.
Mr. Stephen? All right, who's the next speaker? I don't think he's there.
Lisa Flores.
All right, Ms. Flores, welcome back. We missed you. You have 2 minutes. She muted?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Flores.
Okay, let me start off with something positive. First off, I want to thank everyone, and especially the folks at the African American Coalition. Last week, I got my 3rd booster shot because I fall in that high-risk group. They're such wonderful people. I would encourage everybody to get their vaccinations so we can take care of this virus and reach herd immunity so we can really go back to the life we had way before. Second, I want to thank Esmeralda Soria, for her excellent support and kind words for victims of domestic violence, and in support of her staffers and creating a safe environment at City Hall. Now, I want to address kind of the issue that was brought up today regarding the one council member who is all about rights. Where was he when I came before you for an appointment to the Planning Commission? And how come he didn't stand up for my protected speech under the First Amendment rights, my First Amendment rights, by calling him a death dealer for his continuous support of pandemic spread? You know, I consider you a bully. I consider you a racist. And I consider you a credible threat to the public because of your stance on the pandemic. And sir, the only stench in City Hall is really you and your white supremacist views. It is often said, if you go everywhere and you smell a stench, most likely it's coming from you. You know, you've showed support for
Ms. Flores, if you could wrap up.
organizations that bring the Proud Boys into my neighborhood in the Tower District. And for that, you're evil, shameful, and should resign from your position, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Flores. Next up is Mr. Keith Scott. Mr. Scott, you'll have 2 minutes. If you could unmute yourself.
Hello, this is Keith Scott, and this is my first time. And can you all hear me?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Perfect. I'll be quick. In terms of what I heard this morning, it was for 1 hour, I believe. I was wondering about it and what we do in our offices that we have here. And the mayor came in and addressed it as well. In a way that I think it should be addressed, how people do it out here in the public arena, is that I would say that there is a maybe kind of a HR function where something like this are put forth first for it to be investigated, and then a decision is made based on the investigation, And so I would say that would be a good approach. And I heard that that would be one way to do that is through the city manager's office. I'm not sure if that's way, but that's what I'm hearing now. But I'm in favor of something different before it comes here to this group. There should be an investigation of the allegations, etc., instead of it all be poured out here like this. Yes, it can be discussed, but discussed in a more professional way as opposed to attacking persons. And that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Next up is Mr. Sam Frank. Mr. Frank, you'll have 2 minutes, sir.
Morning, Council President, Vice President, and Councilmember Frank. I'm President of the Fresno City Employees Association.
Could you speak a little bit louder, Sam?
Let me. How's that? Is that better?
Yeah, you must have a City of Fresno internet connection. 'Cause you're breaking. Go ahead. That was a little better. That was a little better, Sam.
I just want to say a little bit about the measures being taken to fight COVID-19, both here at City Hall and elsewhere. I just want to, for purposes of clarity, I've always been very hopeful that vaccinations would take care of the problem. I have vaccinated as soon as I can. My wife, who's an RN, of course, is vaccinated as soon as she can be vaccinated. But that being said, as president of I also received emails from people who are either religiously against being vaccinated, or whose doctors have told them that they should take vaccine for various reasons, or who've just heard from other medical people.
Oh, we lost Mr. Frank. Let's see if we can get him back. Let's go to the next speaker while we get him back. Miss Molly Ann. Miss Molly Ann, you'll have 2 minutes, ma'am.
Yes, last week I was on West Hedges Avenue, and as I was walking along the sidewalk, I was completely shocked at the amount of homeless. And as I proceeded along, I noticed Councilman Miguel Arias walking towards me. And I said, Miguel, what are you doing about all these homeless? And he proceeded to tell me to go F myself. And I was completely shocked that an elected official would speak to me that way. And I said, wow, I can't believe you talk to women that way. And I find it completely ironic that during the course of this meeting, he tells people they should learn to control their emotions. That was his exact words. When I am merely concerned about the number of homeless that this city has seen. The rise in homelessness. I'm sure everybody in the community can see how it's grown so much. And I merely asked him, and for him to make that statement, go F yourself, it was just shocking. And so I can't believe how he's acting, like he's a champion for women or something when he talks to women that way. And, I just think it's completely unacceptable.
Thank you, Ms. Ann. Next speaker is Mr. Robert Mccloskey. Mr. Mccloskey, you'll have 2 minutes, sir.
Thank you. I recently received some requested information from the city regarding the HEART team, the homeless assistance team. I did, formerly known as the Homeless Task Force. I asked for the policy and procedures. I was surprised to find that they're using a policy issued in August 30th, 2007, titled Garbage Removal, Cleanup of Temporary Shelters, and Code Enforcement Abatement Procedures. The one statement policy simply says the city shall respond to complaints, basically get rid of the temporary shelters in a manner that protects public health and safety, which complies with state and federal laws. It must be noted that with the current roundups and raising of camps, that the city is currently violating current CDC guidelines on removing people from encampments. Funding for the homeless task force exceeds $1 million annually, and that appears to be just for the police department, which most of it going to salary, fringe benefits, and overtime pay, with the deputy chief, lieutenant, a sergeant, and 6 officers. City employees from the sanitation division, which are 7 of them, and in code enforcement divisions, 3 more people appear to be funded separately in the city's budget, and that information was not included. So obviously the costs are well over $1 million. The cost includes HB salaries, which we know is a 6-figure salary, and it talks about 7 new positions called community revitalization specialists, which remain unfilled. I'm assuming those are supposed to be outreach team people. Instead, the city is contracting with Poverello Outreach Team, 8 employees, the King Q Hero Team, 6 employees, also funded separately. And the city is currently seeking $750,000.
You could wrap up, Mr.
For
Mccloskey.
the Poverello Outreach Team. While the city spends millions on policing the homeless, they continue to fail to provide for basic human needs like water and sanitation. Water and sanitation are human rights, both under international law.
Thank you, Mr. Mccloskey.
685, and we know they're getting less than refugee camps are required to provide in terms of sanitation and water. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mccloskey. Next up is Ms. Des Martinez. Ms. Martinez, you'll have 2 minutes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Martinez.
Okay, thank you very much. I've been in the tower protesting regarding the mistreatment of our unhoused community and the mocking from Adventure Church about people with mental illness and drug addiction. My first day there, I went by myself to raise awareness regarding the mistreatment of our unhoused community by a local church. After I had set up, I had 3 men from Adventure Church, 2 of them being pastors and 1 being a security guard, approached me and to tell me to move across the street. I explained to him what I was doing and why I was there, and he was so upset with me, he said he was going to call the police, in which he did. I shouldn't have to go on from there because everything was live once the police officer approached me. During that time, I went live. I had several church members from Adventure Church, family, friends, post on my live comment about mental illness and how we need to seek out help. So I decided to go back the following week to raise awareness about the mental illness and the challenges that we have out here regarding homelessness and individuals with mental illness. Once again, the church and their family members and friends found a way to mock something else about the unhoused community. One of the church members came out with a sign that says, "Do not do drugs." On that second week I was there, Josh Fulfer stated on his live feed that he was contacted by a church member from Adventure Church, and he stated on his live, "Des is outside, can you come help us?" Well, Josh showed up with his little camera and his fake audience, asking them to round up the troops. He also made public comments stating that it was open season on us. This is what led the Fresno Police Department officers being assigned once again to the Tower District. During my time in the Tower protesting, I seen favoritism on our PD has with this church. Many rights were violated, and the PB, GOP, and GAs were allowed to cross over our paths because they said we are going to the church, which everyone's seen their interactions with Anthony Flores had with a known hate group, shaking their hands and saying, "Thank you for coming out and supporting us." Here we are today, and for the past 3 weeks, the city has wasted officers' times because of this hate group. They are not there for me. They came because of the calls for open season. So when is our city going to stop all the hate groups from trying to waste taxpayers' money? Why did Fresno Police Department put us in harm's way by violating our rights, moving us across the street when they knew we were in harm's way? Wait.
You can wrap up, please.
I'm not 3 minutes yet. Yeah, I got it because I wrote 3-minute speech for you.
It's 2 minutes, Des.
What would have transpired would have not have transpired. And why did a protester get arrested when a proud girl was allowed to leave? When she approached me saying, "I better not come to Clovis," and tried to rip my mask off, which she ended up poking me in my face. That assault, which 9 police officers were standing there, should be on their body cam. I informed all 9 officers I wanted a citizen's arrest. I was ignored, and I kept repeating myself multiple times until Beckwith finally said, "Okay, take her over there."
Thank you, Ms. Martinez.
That proud girl was allowed to leave the area. so much more detail, but this is only 3 minutes.
Thank you, Ms. Martinez. Next up is, and I've got quite a bit of speakers.
Council President,
Mr. Stephen Ayala.
I just want to point out that the city manager and I will be meeting with Ms. Des Martinez and other protesters, organizers, to get some of these issues resolved.
Great, thank you. Next up, Mr. Stephen Ayala. Mr. Ayala, you'll have 2 minutes. Is he on mute, City Clerk?
Hello?
Go ahead, Mr. Ayala, you have 2 minutes.
Okay, 2 minutes. I just want to say good morning to the council, city council. I'm currently at work, so yeah, 2 minutes is good for me. I'm calling in regarding the PLA that you guys voted on the 2nd. I'm a construction worker here in Fresno, live in Tower District for the last 6 years. And Miguel Arias, he's the council guy for the 3rd District. I've emailed him, and I hope he's read my emails regarding that, as I oppose that because I am not union. And what this really comes down to is about money and unions. And I've worked on plenty of city works projects here in Fresno, and I have not had to pay to work on these jobs. You know, this is America, and I believe in free competition, you know, and stuff that comes. I had a speech, but it was a long morning listening to everything that was going on right there. But, you know, I just...
I think we lost Mr. Ayala.
You guys are
Mr. Ayala, you still there? Your connection was breaking up. All right, let's go on to the next speaker. We lost him. Mr. Daniel, you can just have his first name on there. Mr. Daniel, you'll have 2 minutes, sir.
Yeah, hi, can you guys hear me good?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Okay. Yeah, this is the second time I'm in one of these meetings, and, you know, obviously the way this started is kind of embarrassing. It's kind of like watching you guys fight like high school kids. But, you know, I guess you guys are there, right? I wanted to follow up on a question I had last time from something that Miguel Arias had said. And I didn't know you guys could respond because I heard him respond to the lady after she got on. So I would love for him to respond on last time he said that he could make, or he's suggesting that mandating vaccines is the next step. And if not, there's alternatives that are even more uncomfortable. He never elaborated on that. So I would love for him to respond on that right now. And then, you know, I find it funny, Nelson is, you know, little dig there about his governor, and that's cool. But, you know, the majority of Fresno wanted that guy out. So, you know, people disagreeing with you and people, you know, not being always on your side and all that. It's not about being racist. It's not being about white supremacists, right? You know, the people that do that to me are dumb. So you guys obviously got different political views and all that. But if you guys don't work together, or if you guys don't want to represent the people right, you know, you don't deserve to be there. And again, like I said, I hope Miguel answers. I mean, he answered to the lady that was going a little crazy over there, but I would love to hear him respond right now.
All right, thank you for that. Next speaker is Mr. Brooke Aiello. Mr. Aiello, you'll have 2 minutes, sir. Did we lose Brooke Aiello?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's okay. You can call me whatever you want. I wasn't trying to speak, so I'm very thankful. I'm just speaking today because I find it increasingly disturbing to see the city not act on the code violations that are happening every single week at Adventure Church. And it strikes me as particularly abhorrent to watch code violations be enforced to the full measure of the law when it has to do with the homeless who don't have as much resources, and yet completely ignored when it's an incredibly rich, wealthy church that is breaking the law. Both of those laws look
to be pretty darn similar, and the way that the enforcement is so dissimilar kind of smacks of nothing but injustice. And I would urge the city council to please start enforcing zoning laws. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next up is Brandy. I believe it's Ms. Brandy News Villegas. You'll have 2 minutes.
Okay, regarding, well, I want to lend my support to, I think, 1E and 1EE. Thank you for protecting the historic buildings. And regarding 1Q, I just want to continue to iterate in the things I've been mentioning before about what needs to be part of outreach, and ask that the city requires that there would be in their trained licensed social workers, people who are trained in mental illness. We have people out there who have been traumatized. We have people who've had bad experiences with law enforcement and with other authority figures, people who have dealt with situations that may not necessarily be apparent to people who are doing outreach that may, come across issues and stuff. And I ask that that would be a requirement in these things, to have people who would understand, who would be able to de-escalate, that might be able to pick up on responses, including the reasons why people may refuse services, and ask that as well, that you require that there be documentation of about people's responses in detail to understand. I also heard that there was word that there was actions to tell outreach to leave when homeless advocates, one in particular, had arrives to assist the homeless, and we need to ensure and require that those who are advocating for homeless caseworkers, homeless advocates like Des and whatnot, are part of those efforts to be able to help those who are homeless, and that these things be protected, that everything that allows for advocacy and for client-centered needs to be met through the homeless advocates, through those who are unhoused and being outreached, are met in great detail in the things that we've mentioned before. And I also ask that, in light of other things, that you also continue to stress protections for those regarding COVID, to protect all of our vulnerable in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Randy. Next up is Mr. Kyle Kirkland. Mr. Kirkland, 2 minutes.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much, Council President Chavez and council members. I just wanted to speak briefly on a couple of things. First of all, we had a very successful Boots in the Park concert this weekend. I just wanted to put that out for the folks at Granite Park. I did think it was conducted more efficiently than last time. I saw an awful lot of folks there. I think it went off peacefully, and really appreciate the city's help and the folks at Granite Park for making that go smoothly. We have an issue in consent calendar. I think it's item 1CC. There was an amendment that was talked about at the last meeting, put forth on our license. It would apply to incremental tables. Were we to be granted those, we were granted 31 tables on August 19th. This amendment, as it was stated last time, or at the last council meeting on September 2nd, and has been expressed to me, would only apply for the incremental 20 tables. For clarity, and given the lack of clarity that was in the ordinance and the application process that we're taking to date, I would appreciate that the city attorney would again express that in public speaking, confirm that. Our existence is predicated on uninterrupted operation, and we do have to clarify, we have to make sure our state and city licenses are in alignment. So I apologize if it continues to seem redundant, but it's very important for us to have that clarity with our operations. So I appreciate the indulgence, and again, thank you to the council for all your help to date. We're very excited about getting back and open, and looking forward to doing that in the very near future. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kirkland. Our last speaker is Ms. Nicole Gearing. Ms. Nicole, are you there?
Yes, thank you, Council President Chavez. Mayor Dyer, President Chavez, and council members, my name is Nicole Gearing. I've been a tireless advocate for workers in the city of Fresno on behalf of the Associated Builders and Contractors for over a decade, 15 years in fact. We're advocating for its members in Fresno who believe in their diverse people and take great care to develop their people for careers in construction, who are the lifeblood of the city of Fresno. They're a city of Fresno residents and your constituents. They have been doing quality work building their city for decades. They should be allowed to continue to do so. Mayor Dyer, I applaud you for your veto of the project labor agreement because it excludes this workforce that I just mentioned, these Fresno construction professionals from being able to work on projects in their own communities. Fresno workers deserve the opportunity to earn competitive wages and better their own community, one project at a time. President Chavez and Fresno City Council, please do not override the mayor's veto. Let the community continue to build their community, and let's all get together and sit down and find a way to work together so that we can create opportunities for all Fresno workers, not just picking winners and losers. Now is not the time to displace any Fresno workers, especially in a time of high crime rates. Fresno workers should be allowed to build Fresno. People like Nathaniel Acosta, who are national craft competition winners, who are among the best of the best, they are now being told that they are unable to work on projects in their city. And these are the best people who you want building their city, their community. Please allow everybody to have the opportunity to work in their community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Gary. That concludes our public comment. I will now close that portion. Do I have a motion to approve the balance of the consent with those items that were pulled?
Council President, we have a minor change to note.
Oh, go ahead, City Attorney.
Yes, the file ID number 21-23390, item 1M. Number 2, the resolution is now the second amendment to fiscal year 2022 salary resolution instead of the third.
And that was 1 as in Mike, 1M.
As in Mike, as in Mary.
All right, we entered that into the record. Vice President, did you have a question about that? No? Okay. All right, that's entered into the record. Do I have a motion to approve the balance of the consent? Motion made by Councilwoman Soria. Second by Vice President Esparza. All right, any opposition? Seeing none, motion carries. Let's go on to contested consent. I'm going to try to take these in alphabetical order. Let's see if I paid attention in the third grade. Item 1I. Go first. I believe this was pulled by Councilwoman Soria. 1I.
I think 1H was the first alphabetical.
Oh, you're correct.
You need to go back to third grade, Council.
Got him.
Tyler graduated last
1H
year.
by Councilmember Bredeville.
Yeah.
Assistant City Manager Barfield, you'll be answering questions.
And there's also Belinda, that's on the line too, in case I need her.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just quick. Who's going to oversee these expenditures?
So it'll be a combination of myself on the administrative side, and on the financial side, it'll be Belinda and Linda Taylor, who oversee grants for FACTS.
Okay, and is the $4 million allocated for the 5 specific CBOs?
Yes.
Okay. Motion to approve. Thank you.
All right, motion was made. Do I have a second?
I do have one question.
Oh,
if I may.
Councilman Arias.
Assistant City Manager Barfield, I know you're a jack of all trades, but putting a health grant under FACTS doesn't make sense to me. Is there nowhere else in the city government system where this grant can be overseen, given that's not your kind of area of expertise?
You'd be surprised. So federal grants, regardless of the topic, pretty much have a lot of the same similarities when it comes to the mission of grant documents. We all use a program either called Grant Solutions or TRAMS. But for us, this is what they do every day. We also hire an additional assistant to help with some of the day-to-day invoicing for the department.
So you feel comfortable that your team will be able to provide the necessary oversight?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
All right, did you want to second that, Councilman Arias? All right, seconded by Councilman
The record,
Arias.
Bredeville and Arias
Yes.
making motions together.
All right, any opposition? Seeing none, motion carries. All right, let's go to item 1I, and that was pulled by Councilwoman Soria.
Thank you, Council President. On this one, I just had a question. I'm super excited. I think we've all kind of expressed how grateful we are that we're receiving this grant. It's been a long time coming. We've been talking about the SAFER grant for a long time. And so I wanted to just ask the administration, because this is for this next the next, I think, 3 fiscal years, correct? But if I clearly remember when we passed a resolution by the council to apply for the SAFER grant, because the previous administration wasn't very excited about doing it. I want to make sure that we're going to follow the intent of the resolution, which is to apply every single year. I just want to make sure that that direction is followed, because at least from my goal is to make sure that we take advantage of, for this one, it's, I think, 100% covered. I think for the following, as far as I've heard, and I know that it's coming around the corner to apply, that we do follow the intent, or at least, let us know where you guys are at, because that was a resolution that was passed by this council.
Yes, so our intent would be to apply for them, and then now we've been granted an award. So what we want to do is figure out how can we afford this over the 3 years, and then when the grant falls off, and then we got to pick up the costs. Just how do we make that work? This one we can make work because we've got some debt falling off. So prior to doing anything with any new grants, we just got to do the same analysis. Just financially, can we afford it out in the out years after if we've been awarded?
But if the application is around the corner, I don't know if it's in the next month or couple months, are we going to apply and then make that determination after we apply? That's what I'm trying to find out.
Yeah, I would. My recommendation would be that we hold on consideration on applying after we have a meeting with council to understand what is the plan to fund this when the dollars drop off. Because this one we had a plan. We were able to make it work. Feeling pretty good that we can add these 42. Another grant to add another 42. I don't know that we can add that.
I will tell you that there was no plan at the beginning of how it was going to get paid over time. We just kind of directed the administration. At the time, they weren't really excited about it. Now, obviously, we have more information and we're in a better financial position. And so I understand that now you guys can see, and can work out the numbers to see the long term, how we're going to cover it. However, I want to make sure that this council's aware that the previous direction that this council gave was to apply for future SAFER grants. So I want to make sure that we have that discussion with the council. One, we can do it, I don't know if it's appropriate to have it over in closed session or here on the dais about what we want to do moving forward with the future SAFER grants, because that was the previous direction. That was given.
Totally.
And what's the time frame, though? I
don't know when the new application's coming out, so I can find out when they're actually call for funds.
Maybe if you can give us an update, and I don't know, is anyone from fire?
Who's on there? Yep.
And Jonathan, is he on?
You have an update on when
The next SAFER grant is available?
I know it's coming up soon. This is Jonathan Chu. Good morning, everyone. I know it's coming up soon. I don't have exact dates, but I'm under the impression it's within the next 2 months that they were anticipating announcing the next round of SAFER applications.
Okay, so
that'd be awesome, because by then we should have some of the mid-year numbers in, all the sales tax, and we can just see where the numbers trending. Our concern right now is just, can this trend we are on sales tax continue? And it won't. What goes up must come down, and we just need to forecast when we think that down comes, are we in a position to fund whatever's left for the city to pick up after the grant might expire. So we'll definitely have that discussion with you guys.
Okay, so I think it would be probably valuable to have it either at the next council meeting or, the next 2 council meetings, just so that we know. And I'd like to hear from my colleagues, how folks are feeling, if they want to still give that direction, because ultimately I think the council will make that decision. Thank you.
Do you want to make a motion on
to
that?
approve.
All right.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Councilwoman Soria, seconded by Councilmember Arias. Any opposition? Seeing none, motion carries. Let's go to item 1K, and that was pulled by Councilmember Maxwell.
think that's correct, Council President.
That was me, Council President.
Oh, sorry, Councilmember Arias.
It's all right. All four of us get confused for each other sometimes.
You guys are both handsome.
Yes, thank you for
Confused
that. I think. Just one question. I know we've been having issues with the current software provider that manages all these agenda items, backup materials, all that kind of stuff. Personally, it hasn't been that great user friendly for me, and you guys have had discussions, but I haven't been privy to those discussions. So a couple of concerns I want to review and make sure that we've checked off those boxes. One of the reasons we went away from Granicus with the previous administration was the lack of customer service. When I was council president and we had hiccups in Granicus, it would take us days to get any kind of responsive customer service. So it created a whole ton of technical delays. Based on the actions that we approved today and the current pandemic, having simultaneous virtual and in-person meetings requires, like we just saw this morning, expedient and immediate customer service. Is Granicus going to be able to provide us that, or are we going to go back to the old, lack of customer service and responsiveness from the provider?
Yeah, we heard loud and clear from the clerk that that was a serious concern. So there is a provision in the new contract with Granicus that has a customer service contact plan with specific people as to who the city clerk can reach at certain times of the day. So we feel that we have stressed the importance of that, and we feel that they've been responsive, and we've put the provision as part of the contract.
And if they don't respond, accordingly, what's our termination clause in the contract?
Brian, I'll let you take that part.
Brian Horn, CIO, Information Services Department. We have a 30-day out clause for any reason.
For any reason? Yep. Okay, I just want to reaffirm and reemphasize that our city clerk is critical to this conversation. So we're going to count on our city clerk to inform us whether or not we're getting responsiveness from the contractor. If not, we're going to have to revisit the contractor because these technical hiccups limit public participation and council's efficiency in these meetings. So I just want to make sure that was clear.
Yeah, Councilman Arias, it was a little bit more deeper than just the lack of customer service. I think internally and I think the public felt it too. We just went through a lot of challenges with that previous system. I know Councilwoman Soria had a lot of concerns about it not being able to directly communicate with her staffs and documents. I don't anticipate that being a problem because we'll have the system that we had before, but with some modifications to accommodate the new requirements that we'll have for going forward. And I think it'll be very helpful for the next president to facilitate a lot of the information that, that gets disseminated. But our clerk will definitely be involved with that. I think that was a challenge last time. We did not have our IT department involved, which is a big hurdle to overcome. But now we got everybody on the same page, so I don't expect any issues to arise from that. Knock on wood.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second, but I do want to make some comments.
Go ahead, Councilman Soria.
So you're right, Council President. I did, was one of the council members that raised concerns with the new system that we transitioned to. I don't think that, one, the council was adequately informed about the transition, and we should have had some test modeling and, before we transition fully. So I think that was an error on our part that we did. I do think that Granicus is not perfect. It has some challenges still. I hope, one of the things that I had requested our clerk, because one of the functions that is key, at least for me, I don't know about for other folks, is the fact that at some point I was able to email directly from Granicus with the documents and the notes and the questions, either to my staff or director of a department. And so then I don't know what happened to that function, but that function was not working. So I'm hoping that that is something that you guys can make sure that as we transition back, they can fix that. And that you guys really, I don't know if you guys should have a committee with our chiefs of staff, the clerk and the administration on these inner workings with it, because really our staff are critical in accessing a lot of the documents also through Granicus. So I think having that communication will help kind of streamline some of the challenges that we do experience. So I would make that recommendation.
And Councilmember Soria, I did speak to Granicus about your concerns with being able to communicate with your staff, and they have assured me that that ability will still be there, and it will be working.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, great. Motion was made, seconded. Any opposition? Seeing none, motion carries. Let's go to item 1L. This one, I do believe it was pulled by Councilmember Maxwell.
Yes, thank you, Council President. Who am I addressing the questions to today, City Manager?
See out in the crowd, TJ Miller, our Personnel Director, Parks Director, TJ Miller.
Good morning, Director
Good morning.
Miller. How are you?
Good. I have our subject matter expert, Ryan Garcia, so he will be here for any technical.
Keep it pretty brief. I really like seeing these kinds of grants. I've had the bike rodeos at a couple of my events. The kids loved it. When I see things like this, I always have questions in the back of my mind. I see it's to accept $125,000. My question is always, how much of that is going to offset, personnel salaries versus how much is actually going to resources and programs to hold these events? What is that breakdown when we receive a grant like this? How much of that money is actually going towards, these type of events versus salary supplements?
I'll have Ryan answer the specifics on the breakdown, and if he doesn't have that, we will get that to you. But it is a mixed use. We staff personnel. We have lots of bike rodeos throughout the year, and 2020 gave a different challenge. We went to a lot of electronic, partnered with Fresno Unified for some Zoom classes, and then we went as soon as we could out into the rodeo arena, that's the bike rodeos, showing up at events. So it does cover the materials. There are limitations, for example, on helmets, how much we can spend on helmets. So we maximize all of those resources, and the more staff we have, the larger the events can be. But I'll let Ryan speak to any other specifics.
Sure, and if I could also just add, and maybe this is a better question for Ryan also, but how long you anticipate this money to last the department for to hold these kinds of events that I've had the fortune of hosting in my district?
Well, to answer your second question, hello, my name is Ryan Garcia, thank you.
Yeah, good morning.
If you can get a little closer to the mic.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. So to answer your second question,
Can you get a little closer to the mic, Ryan? Is the microphone on, Marco?
Hold on.
No. Nope, it's not on.
We want everybody on TV to hear you too.
Marco, if you want to go ahead and use the handheld,
Give
that
them
might
the
work as well.
portable.
Can you hear me now? All right.
There you go.
All right.
All
So
right.
to answer your second question, as long as the grant dollars are available, we're going to continue to apply. So there hasn't been any deadline dates or when these grant dollars will no longer be available to apply for. So we've been continuing to apply for these OTS grants. As long as they're available, we're going to continue to apply.
And how long would you expect this to last your department?
I don't actually have an answer to that question.
Okay.
I mean, we could potentially reach out to OTS and get a time frame from them. But I think as long as there's pedestrians and cyclists are continuing to have injuries and fatalities, I believe that these dollars will continue to be available. And then to answer your first question in regards to the budget, so we have five items here. So $100,000 of the budget is for staff or personnel costs. So mainly that'll be for community recreation assistants, community and service aides, and pretty much all of the budget is for the staff to implement the program. There's very little of the dollars that go to like administrative costs, like in the office for like, administrative staff or whatnot. So mainly $100,000 of the cost is going to the staff that will be implementing the programs.
And remind me, are these full-time folks doing this program full-time, or is this something that they do in addition to their duties that this money is then used for to pay them for the time spent doing these types of events?
They are not full-time employees. They're temporary employees that have been hired as a temporary CRA or as a CRA would be a recreation assistant, and then temporary recreation specialists.
And in their part-time positions, are they focused solely on these types of events, or Does it
Correct.
vary solely
They're
on
hired
types of things?
specifically to work this program, so they're not kind of working other programs after school and then coming to work this program as well. So they're just specifically hired directly for this program.
That's exactly what I wanted to know. I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve. Thank you.
Councilwoman Soria, you had a question?
Yeah, I just had a specific question regarding the selection of where you have these programming happen in the city. $125,000 is not a lot of money. So how do you select sites? What districts are you prioritizing? What is your mechanism for determining, what neighborhoods have the greatest need, if that's the metric that we're utilizing, which I hope that we are, I guess I'm trying to understand, what is it that you guys use to figure out where you guys are doing these events?
So in the, excuse me, we try to evenly spread the education across the city, but we generally do go to the areas in need, the areas of higher injuries and fatalities, or the areas of higher need, the districts within higher need, or the lower income areas. We found that sometimes the lower income areas are the higher target for injuries and fatalities in these areas.
Okay. And then last question. So I know that there were some Measure P dollars that, we have been talking about over the last 6 months on this dais, and probably longer. Just wondering, are there any Measure P dollars that are also for this next fiscal year complementary to this part of the work, which is, I think it's critical because we do see, accidents happen in our community. So as part of those dollars?
Make sure this is working.
Yeah.
At this time, there's nothing set aside specifically for this budget year for Measure P for this program.
Okay.
And then I just wanted to make sure that we addressed your question, Councilmember Maxwell. The $125,000 for this grant, we have strategized so that we could make it last the entire year. So utilizing the part-time staff, we'll be able to stretch our dollars and hit all of our targets. And if we do need additional funds, that's the route we would go to get more for the community in this area.
Councilmember Arias, did you have a question?
Yes, just two questions. When are we going to get a Measure P update? And secondly, when are we going to secure a Parks Director so that you can do personnel full-time, Mrs. Director?
Both are on the horizon, so we are in the final stages before interview for the Parks Director. The Parks Director. Get the directors correct. And then in terms of a Measure P update, I'll defer to Tommy in terms of how we want to do.
Yeah, we can give you an update. I mean, we have an update of how the funding's been allocated, and just where the money is and how we're moving forward with it. So we can get you an update on that. The one category that has not had any dollars allocated or programmed for this fiscal year is the arts, community arts, because the ordinance said you can't spend that money until you have the Arts Council plan done. And so we're going through to hire a consultant to prepare the Arts Council plan. And once that's done, we can start programming those dollars. We can give you a program of how I think 28 million this year. I think we had programmed 22, so we can give you an update on how those 22 are being allocated.
Perfect. And then just more specifically, when are we getting a director? If I could have a best case scenario, worst case scenario.
I think we were talking about the end of November, beginning of December.
I think it'll be right around Thanksgiving time
Yep.
that we should be able to have a director.
And we're talking making a selection, which may mean a few months before they actually arrive, right? Based on who you select.
I think that they would be able to be in place at that point.
Yep.
Okay.
I
Perfect.
think if everything goes as planned, we'll have a placement at that point.
Thank you, and thank you for cleaning up the JSK Park. Just of note, I have like 10 more parks that have weeds growing in playgrounds, graffiti, and a lot of trash. So we gotta get to all those parks sooner than later.
Absolutely. And we do need all of your partnership. Just give us the information so that we can be out there. We can't be all out there all at the same time. So we do need to partner up.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Director. So motion was made by Councilmember Maxwell, seconded by, I believe it was Councilwoman Soria. Any opposition? Seeing none, motion carries. Item 1P, Councilmember Maxwell.
Thank you, Council President. I did have the ability to meet as a subcommittee with my colleagues, Arias and Soria, along with the Planning Department regarding this item. We wanted to make an amendment. I think my colleague, Councilmember Arias, has the language in front of him, so I'll go ahead and I'll let him read that amendment into the record at this time.
Thank you. And just for the general public's understanding, our CDBG committee did meet yesterday with staff. They were very helpful in walking us through some of the considerations for this item. In big picture, we want to make sure that as we put out these resources out into the community, that the organizations have the capacity to get the money out to residents as quick as possible, and also that we potentially identify resources for the continuation of the eviction protection program. So with that, the motion is to approve the item with the following amendments. Continue the first action related to the agreements for the Deposit Assistance Program under ESG CV to September 30th, 2021. And for the second action, to approve an agreement with Community Housing Council for $100,000 in CDBG CV funds for landlord-tenant counseling, and continue to reevaluate the remaining $380,000 in CDBG CV funds to a future date. So with that motion, Council, it'll give us the time the staff needs to get us the additional information that we're requesting, assess capacity of the organizations that we're funding to get the money out, and also to assess where the eviction protection program stands to see whether additional resources are needed in this fiscal year through this eligible funding source. And
do I have a second for that?
Second that, Council
Second,
President.
Councilmember Maxwell.
Council
Councilmember
President?
Soria?
Yeah, I just have a question. I may have missed in what you read, Councilmember Arias. I had brought up a concern in the committee about the organizations that were receiving some of the funding for the, the deposits, the Deposit Assistant Program. And so I just want to make sure that when it comes back, I think we had talked about including other organizations that serve kind of the west area of the city of Fresno.
correct.
I just
So
wanted to make sure that that's clear.
So the first item would bring that portion of the item back by September 30th. Staff is going to evaluate whether organizations are available to do work in other parts of the city. We want to make sure that as we're giving deposit assistance, it doesn't just go to one quarter of the city, but it gets distributed as much as we can citywide. So Mrs. Clark, if I missed anything, you can correct me, but I think I got the thumbs up, so we should be good.
Okay, perfect.
All right. That answer your question, Councilman Soria? All right, motion was made, seconded. Any opposition? Seeing none, motion carries. Let's go to item 1R. I forget who pulled item 1R. Councilmember Arias, did you pull 1R?
I did. The only reason I really pulled it is I haven't met with staff on this. It's fairly new. I didn't know until now that there's a deadline for the close of escrow of some kind. So, or some of that.
Is this on? Can you hear me?
Can you explain to us in layman's term what this item does?
Can you hear me?
No.
Can you hear me?
A little louder though.
Karina Nunez.
There you go.
Housing Division.
We can hear you.
You have time to consider it. The houses aren't even built yet, so you do have time.
Perfect.
So can I ask a question on
Yes.
that?
My
Councilmember?
apologies, I misunderstood.
It's okay.
The information.
That's fine.
So do we want to continue the item then?
I'll make a
Or-
motion to continue to the
Okay.
next meeting so we can just talk to staff about what this item really does.
All right.
I did want to though point out, I just wanted to figure out, because it is a big increase, we're going from 48,000 to 156,000 in terms of, I know that the goal is to lower payments, but does that mean then less people are going to be available to buy these homes? Or that's what I want to figure out, at least from what I read. Am I on the right item? Right?
It's item 1R.
Well, I had a similar question to you, council member. I mean, we're increasing it by essentially $100,000
Yeah.
per each of these folks, and that equals about $200,000. So a similar question that I was going to raise is, we're making these two families more whole, but does that reduce our ability to offer similar assistance to additional families to the tune of $40,000 to $50,000 across 5 or 6 families?
Yes, you could reduce make an amendment to reduce the amount that we're giving them, because the houses aren't even built and no money has been spent. So
All right.
you can consider.
But I guess we're trying to understand what is the policy behind, because you guys are making you're making the recommendation that we allow and increase it to 156 versus 48,000. I'm trying to figure out, I understand the lowering the payments, but are we seeing that this is a huge issue? I guess I want to understand what is the problem, and that's why
No,
we're increasing.
It's never been an issue before. Habitat has a new director, and going forward, he wants to change how the home portion is being contributed to the overall mortgage. So in the past, the home portion has always been a larger portion, and the first mortgage has always been a smaller portion. So he wants to switch it where the home portion is smaller and the first mortgage is larger, because that's how Habitat makes their money.
Yes,
So-
Council, there's a lot of policy implications for us on this item. We haven't met. I know the Habitat has gone through a few directors in the last few months. So I just asked for more time for us to meet with the applicant and also with our director and city manager on some of these implications.
Yeah, I think maybe more time would be great. So did you make a motion for more time?
Yes, the motion on the table.
I'll second.
All right, motion was made to second. Any opposition? I think we could just do consensus, right, City Attorney? On continuing? All right, let's do that. Move on to item 1Y, and that was pulled by Councilmember Arias.
So, Director, my apologies, but I've been pretty busy with the project labor agreement and a few other things. But in my recollection, this is a second change order for increased costs for this city-owned motel. I haven't had a chance to meet with staff to understand. It's a pretty significant change. What's the update on the facility? Is it fully complete? Is it filled with people? And then what are some of the changes that result in this $300,000 change? Can't hear you.
I can't hear you, yeah.
Morning, Council.
There you
go. Okay, all right, very good. Thank you. So the item before you is the second change order. Just to refresh the Council, the first change order was not a cost increase, so to speak, for the same scope. What was done was the contract was started within the administrative spending levels under the job order contracting to move it along given the urgency of the situation. And then the change order was brought to basically ask the council to bring the full scope involved. This is a true change order of unforeseen conditions, $300,000 basically of when the walls, when the ceilings were removed, when the finishes, there has been an enormous amount found behind there. The contractor's price, of course, it was a fair price. It assumed that work would not be required in those areas. We've had rooms that literally, before we got involved, had no hot water to them at all. And there's a full list in the item before you in the staff report, a full breakdown of dollar amount by specific item for your review. It is time sensitive in order to finish the work. And I did want to hand off to Director H. Spies just to talk a little bit about how many residents we have there, how's the program working in general, because that's, I believe, part of the
Director,
question.
before we hear from Mr. H., there was a commitment to add exterior iron fencing to the backside of the property, given the amount of transients that were cutting through the chain link fence and engaging in activities that were not appropriate. I don't see that in the list of change orders. Is that fence being erected? Because the last time I drove by, it was still had a chain link fence with holes in it.
That is happening, although not by this contract.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, so that is just so, that is happening, but not by this contractor. We do have ability to get that done.
Thank you for the
within budget.
clarification.
I have a question, if I'm
Councilmember
allowed.
Soria, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm looking at the staff report, and it just says the fiscal impact. So the additional $300,000 is funded from the general fund. Was this something that we had previously voted on the council? What general fund dollars are being allocated? I'm just wondering if there's something that's not going to be funded because of this increase?
Yeah, when we had presented the mid-year report last year, we had showed I forget what was the exact number, but it was like we were showing like $14 million of carryover, and then we came over and showed, but these are the things we have to commit to that, what appeared to be carryover, wasn't carryover, and this $300,000 was part of that presentation we made to council.
Okay, so this is all accounted for then?
Correct.
Okay, perfect. I just wanted to make sure. Because I know that we're always saying, hey, the use of our general fund, given that it has so much flexibility in terms of its usage. But okay, the other thing that I just suggest, just because I know that one of the points that is going to be made in the PLA discussion in probably, I don't know what time, maybe after lunch, but is that local businesses. And so what would be great, I know that we do have the local preference section in the all the staff reports, but it'd be great if you guys could put if the local businesses actually reside in the city of Fresno. I think that would send a statement, right? I know Durham Construction is a local regional business. It's not in the city of Fresno, it's in the city of Clovis. So I just want to make sure that as we're talking about, this whole notion that we want to, give local preference and motivate our city of Fresno businesses to bid and get these projects, that we put it out on the agenda so that it's fully transparent about where these businesses are at. Thank you.
Council
All right.
President,
Do you
I'll
have a
make
motion?
a motion to approve H. Can we bother you just for a quick update on the status of the facility occupants?
Yep, thank you, Councilmember Arias and council members. The Travel Inn, as you recall, is a part of a larger strategy to add capacity, both in terms of short-term shelter beds as well as long-term affordable housing. So we have the 4 home key projects that were purchased in partnership with the Fresno Housing Authority that are owned by the Housing Authority. We also have purchased 2 motels through the city. That includes the Travel Inn and the Valley Inn, which is now called Sage Commons. In terms of utilization, these are critical parts of what we're doing in terms of addressing street homelessness and creating a pipeline that moves people from the streets to shelter, to triage, to affordable housing, and then hopefully onto home ownership someday. So right now, the Travel Inn and we're using the Travel Inn and Sage Commons to do 2 things. One is address our most high acuity encampments, and secondly, to relocate folks from the emergency shelter that was at the Sands that you all approved for 3 months and then a second 3 months. That contract ends September 30th. We anticipate using all of these beds going forward, and then having on an ongoing basis as folks move through to safe exits that we'll be able to use those beds in an ongoing consistent attempt across the city to address key encampments. The one right now that thankful for Councilmember Esparza and his continuous concern about the major encampment along McKinley Canal. We're in the process of relocating. We actually relocated 62 individuals from that encampment yesterday. We'll be wrapping that up over the next couple of days. And thank you, Councilmember Maxwell, for being a part of addressing the private property issue down by 180 and Clovis and Minnewawa, because as we know, we want to anticipate some of the movements of folks that don't accept our housing. And so we addressed that early, and that was an important piece. So that you can anticipate that type of strategic relocation going forward. And these are relocations. These aren't disbursements. These aren't criminalizing the homeless at all. In fact, these really allow us to embrace CDC guidelines at a very high level, because we're moving people out of encampments into motel rooms where there is space and there's a lot more safety and opportunities for health.
All right, thank you for that. Any additional questions, Council?
Thank you.
All right, motion was made, seconded. Any opposition? Seeing none, motion carries. All right, let's go to our last consent item 1AA. I put this on. Council, I don't need a vote on this. The purpose of putting this was just for introduction, but it is a resolution, so it had to go on this in this type of format. But I just want to very briefly outline the key concepts that I would like the city to explore. We've been through this conversation before on the city of Fresno forming its own Veterans Memorial District. We know that our neighbors to the east have their own, but here's what I want to flag, and this is important for the public to know. There are right now the boundary lines that stretch all the way down to the city of Fresno, into my district, into District 4, and into the western part, all the way up to the western part of the city of Fresno. That assessment, those revenues are then used to support the Clovis facilities. And I think it's important for people to know that. I didn't know that till, not too long ago. But what I want to look at is what would the city of Fresno boundary lines look like? There have been conversations previously, I think, Georgianne, you were part of some of those, where it would mirror what either Fresno Unified and Central Unified School Board lines would essentially be the outlines for that. I want to make sure that we flesh that out with legal counsel and what that will look. And I think, City Attorney, you've already done quite a bit of legwork on this, I think about 4 years ago, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So those are some of the key areas that I want the city of Fresno to look into. And like I said, I don't need a vote, but I do want to put this at the top because I think this is something important. And obviously, Councilwoman Soraya, you have, I believe, VFW Post 509 is in your district. It would entail a conversation with them, with our Legion of Valor, our museum, and all the stakeholders. But this is just to get the conversation started.
Absolutely, and I just had a few questions. I think this is a great idea. I think the only thing that I wanted to make sure is, as you guys are crafting the scope, who has the final authority on the scope of, what boundary lines, the tax implications? Is it commercial? Is it going to be commercial or residential assessment? And the only reason that I'd like to know that, as you guys know, I've been working with neighborhoods out in the west area, and because of the cost of, building at the fringe or in those outlying areas, we are requiring them to put another assessment into these homes. So I just want to make sure that these assessments that we're going to potentially bring forward either are capped or, that we don't make it so expensive that new homeowners that want to live in that the west area can't afford to purchase a home. So those were some of the concerns. So who is in charge of determining those final
City
scopes?
Attorney, what would the assessment legal parameters be?
I think it can go up to 0.3% on property tax. And what I would suggest is that if the sense is to move forward with this, we get you a comprehensive memo on the legal issues and the options.
Yeah, absolutely. I think having all those questions answered, I know that today we won't vote. I think it's a good idea. Obviously, it looks like the Clovis district takes in a lot of the wealthier areas of Fresno. So they're already maximizing on our kind of wealthier areas. So just even interested to know how that impacts the creation of this district. Because if they're in the city of Fresno but already included in this Clovis Memorial District, I'm assuming we can't put them in ours.
Probably not. I mean, ultimately, it's the city and LAFCO that pursue the process. But I imagine this would not be disturbing the existing Clovis district.
Yeah, that's correct, City Attorney. And part of the vetting that I want the city to pursue is obviously if our residents are being assessed a fee, they should be entitled to services, correct? So what that looks like, I don't know at this point. Maybe it means using some of that revenue to build a facility a little bit closer to the residents that are paying for it. Maybe it means providing transportation to the facility for our residents, but I want that to be explored as well.
Yes, ultimately, there would be a special district that governs itself.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm trying to figure out, that special district, who makes the determinations? And so I guess that's what I want in the memo, because if that's out of our hands, the only concern I would have is, if we're going to do, say, a $900 per resident assessment, because that's what a 0.3 of 1 cent would potentially be. I want to make sure that we know the financial implications and who has the authority to make those decisions.
We'll get you a good memo on it.
Perfect, thank you. Those were all my questions.
All right, Councilmember Arias?
Council President, just a couple of points. You're absolutely right that Fresno taxpayers have been subsidizing the Clovis Veterans Memorial and funding it for years. You know, a lot of questions I get from the veterans in Fresno is, why don't we have these facilities that Clovis does, right? Why don't we celebrate veterans the way Clovis does? And it's always pains me to have to inform them that we are funding the Clovis way of life when it comes to celebrating, servicing, and building amazing facilities for veterans, while our veterans facilities deteriorate, to be frank with you all. I have a veterans post along Motel Drive that requests money every year to help pay their electric bill, to help make some minor maintenance improvements. Just met with the veterans post in West Fresno, who's making the same request for us to take general fund money to help do basic maintenance of their collapsing roof of their building, because there's no dedicated Veterans Memorial District, and the current one that the city funds doesn't direct any money this way. Veterans Memorial Hall, which is an amazing building, has been in deterioration for decades. And you know, it's a shame, but it's also a reflection of decisions that were made in the 50s and 60s to take the newest growth area of Fresno and turn it to a district in Clovis, where they determine where to invest that money. And for generations, they've made decisions not to invest in Fresno veteran facilities, even though we've been paying into the Clovis Veterans Memorial District. So it's one of those things, City Manager, that you shake your head and say, how did we get here? How does that make any sense? How's that equitable? How's that, you know, it's taxation without representation to the extreme. So I'm looking forward to the conversation. I would definitely, as part of that legal memo, City Manager and City Attorney, if you can give us an inventory of all the veterans posts within the city of Fresno that are not receiving any resources from the Clovis Memorial District, what the condition of those facilities are. One of the challenges with those facilities, outside the Veterans Memorial District, they're not owned by the city, and they're not eligible to receive Measure P funds as one of the potential funding sources. And secondly, I would ask that we press pause to any long-term leases in the Veterans Memorial Building, because if we do move forward with this special district, which I'm fully supportive of, we're going to have to plan for renovations, construction, and I would hate to have to ask somebody not to come back for their next year's play with very short notice. So just be cognitive of that. It's the same conversation we're having with operators of our community centers. Now that we have Measure P, we have to be thoughtful of who we lease to, for how long we lease it, given our ability to now invest in our public facilities. But I do imagine, Council President, that you will use your skills as a negotiator to have very difficult and yet sensitive conversations with the leaders of the Clovis Memorial District. And it would be extremely helpful for us to get a report from them on how they support Fresno veterans in Fresno and the veterans posts in the city of Fresno with the resources that we pay into their district, and we have been for at least 50 years.
More than happy to, and as you probably already saw, I'm an expert at awkward conversations. Councilmember Carbasi.
Okay, so I want to thank you, Council President, for bringing this forward. It's long overdue. I think the Clovis Veterans Memorial District was formed in 1946. They have about a $4 million annual budget. It's like the CFD argument. The reason why they have these things is because they pay for it. Granted, a chunk of it is from this city. The Veterans Memorial Hall we have has, if anyone's been in there, has a lot of great artifacts, but they have a warehouse with double that amount of local historical artifacts. And it would be really great if we can have a Veterans Memorial District funded by the taxpayers, of course, an independent body. I want us to be really careful because there is an independent elected board. I think that we will be able, if you put it on the ballot, council member, to be able to determine the parameters. So I hope we'll have that influence, that ability. I think, City Attorney, you sent me a memo on that. Maybe it was an older memo from before. So just if you just forward that one, that should be good. That explains all that stuff. But no, this will be great. Thank you for taking initiative on this. This is going to be a game changer for our veterans. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Carbasi. So with that, I think there's consensus. City Attorney, we'd like that information packet to be provided to the council. And that was the value of, obviously, we're limited by Brown Act, but we had a public conversation. I think we all know what information we need to make a decision. Just last question, what would be the timeline if the council decided to place this on the ballot for next year that we would have to codify all this by?
Well, I believe the first step is to do a formal resolution of initiation. That will be part of the memo that we'll be putting together as the timeline for everything. There will be some things that were out of our hands.
Sure.
But I imagine it could take as long as a year to get it formed.
Okay. All right. Nothing is easy. Vice President, do you have a question? Let's kind of see what I think November will probably be the more realistic goal for us.
I was talking about a year to complete the process.
Oh.
Not to get you a memo.
Okay. All right. Well, codify that in the memo a memo on the memo. All right. So this consensus, we'll move that item for a later discussion. City Attorney, I know we have to get to closed session before 12. We got a time sensitive. Do we have time for one quick item, 2B? The
Yes,
TEFRA
if we
hearing?
have 20 minutes for closed session, we should be
All
good.
right. Let's do item 2B, the TEFRA hearing. Do we have staff here to, Mr. Lima? The floor is yours, sir.
Good morning, Council.
But before you go, City Attorney, do I have to formally open the hearing, or does this formally open the hearing now?
This is opening the hearing, and you'll open it up to the public.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Lima.
Good morning, Council members. Mike Lima, Finance Director Controller. Before you today is a resolution approving the issuance of no more than $150 million in tax-exempt bonds by the California Municipal Finance Authority on behalf of Human Good. $25 million of these bond proceeds will be used for the financing of bonds to fund the construction and equipping of the terraces at San Joaquin Gardens, located at 5555 North Fresno Avenue. Under the Tax Equity and Fiscal Responsibility Act, or TEFRA, the governing body of the entity where these facilities that gain benefit from the bond issue are located must hold a hearing to receive public testimony and approve the issuance of the refunding bonds. This hearing was noticed on the city's website on September 9th, 2020. And as of today, we received no testimony either for or against the proposed action. Payment of these bonds would be the sole responsibility of the California Municipal Finance Authority from their revenue streams. The city will have no obligation or liability associated with this facility or these bonds. Staff recommends that Council conduct the required TEFRA hearing and at its conclusion, adopt the resolution approving the issuance of bonds by the California Municipal Finance Authority. I'm available to answer any questions. Thank you very much.
All right. Any questions from our colleagues? Do we have a motion?
So move.
All right. Motion by Councilmember Arias, seconded by Vice President Esparza. Do we have anybody in the queue to speak on this for public comment, City Clerk?
No, we do not.
All right. I will close that public comment. Motion was made, seconded. Any opposition? Seeing none, motion carries. All right, City Attorney, shall we go back in closed session and tackle that item and then the item that Councilwoman Soria wanted to discuss prior to C?
Yes.
Want to make the announcement?
Yes, the two closed sessions to be considered now will be 5B, the deciding whether to initiate litigation with Friant Water Authority, and also conference with legal counsel and anticipated litigation concerning the PEIR with Leadership Council.
And we'll be back after lunch at 1:30. It's now 1:33. City Attorney, you have an announcement to make?
Yes, in closed session, the council authorized filing a suit against Friant Water Authority for essentially declaratory relief. There were 4 yes votes, and voting no were Councilmembers Bredeville and Chavez, and abstaining was Councilmember Soria. That's all.
Right. Okay, thank you. All right, let's go now on to, we did item 2B. Let's go on to...
Council President, I
Yes.
believe the city manager had a comment.
Oh, I'm sorry, City
I think
Manager?
we had asked in the meeting, public comments.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So I appreciate that, City Attorney. Thank you, Council President. Thank you, City Council. As we discussed, as the City Attorney just indicated, we'll be filing for declaratory relief against Friant Water Authority. Just to let the public know kind of the background. Friant Kern Canal has failed down in the Porterville area. It's caused by subsidence, which is caused by overpumping of the groundwater, collapsing the clay layer, and then just everything sinks. And so it's a damage. Second time it's been damaged. No action taken by the city of Fresno caused the damage to the Friant Kern Canal. Nothing we ever did caused that. The request by Friant to fund the repairs for the damages that weren't caused by the city provides no benefit to the city. They'll want money from the city without any return benefit for that. Friant knows who is responsible for the damage. They clearly know who is responsible. We know that because Friant has entered into settlement agreements with parties that caused the damage. Unfortunately, Friant did not request those parties to pay the full cost of repair. Hence, they're coming to the city of Fresno to backfill that deficit. For context, at this time, the past due amounts owed on city utility bills owed is about $14 million. So our residents are in arrears on their water bills, about $14 million. A normal month, a normal time, it's about $1 million. So we're 14 times above that under this current conditions. And again, for further context, $14 million is more than the annual budget for most of the irrigation districts that are involved in this program. We've had discussions with the Friant Water Authority to identify some options to resolve the issue, whereby we would agree to pay some amount, but in return, we would get some benefit. So classic beneficiary pays model. We would agree to pay, make payment, but we would get some benefit. We have been unable to resolve the issue with the Friant Water Authority on that matter. And so as the city attorney indicated, we will now pursue this issue through declaratory relief in the legal system. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that, City Manager. Let's go on to item 2C. And I believe we will be continuing that item for the September 30th, so I'll go ahead and make a motion for that.
I'll second.
Move it to September
Council,
30th meeting?
That's September 30th at the same time,
Yes.
10:05?
All right, motion's been made. Do we have to go out to the public since it's being continued?
Not on the procedural motion, right?
All right, motion was made, seconded. Any opposition? All right, it is now moved on to September 30th. Let's go on to item 2D, which is the actions pertaining to the program year 2020 Consolidated Annual Performance Evaluation Report. Who do we have on staff that, come on up. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Council. I'm Karen Jenks, the manager for the Housing and Community Development Division. So before you today is the required public hearing for the draft 2020 to 2021 Consolidated Annual Performance Evaluation Report, or CAPER. The CAPER serves to meet the annual performance reporting requirements of HUD and describes the activities undertaken and accomplishments made by the city from July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2021, using the CDBG, Home, ESG, and HOPWA funds. The draft CAPER was published on August 13th, 2021 for a public review and comment period through September 13th. No public comments have been received yet. Any public comments received at this hearing will be included in the final submission that is made to HUD by the September 29th deadline. The department published a pre-recorded webinar presentation which summarized the information that's in the CAPER. I have that presentation available to go through if the council would like. Otherwise, at this time, staff asks that the council obtain the views and comments through the scheduled public hearing.
All right, council, any questions for staff on this?
I'll make a motion to open the public hearing and to approve the item at the close of the public hearing.
All right, motion's been made.
Make a second on that, Council President.
Second, Maxwell. Do we have anybody from the public queued up to speak, City Clerk?
Yes, Brandy Villegas.
All right, we can punch her up. Brandy News Villegas, you'll have 3 minutes, ma'am. 3 minutes.
I want to mention that there's a lot of really great programs that were funded last year, and I really am greatly appreciative of the ways that these have helped people, especially during the COVID pandemic. Among the things regarding homelessness, I'm very appreciative of the work of Marjorie Mason Center and the whatever funding they were used to be able to help those who are dealing with domestic violence. The one thing I wanted to bring up in these is a thing that I wouldn't be able to find on this report is that the report, because of, I noticed that there is monitoring and that because of COVID that there was, it was monitored through looking at basically desk reports on different things. And regarding homelessness, my concern is what things I mentioned in budget and stuff is the lack of evaluation that is client-centered, comes from third parties, and to ensure that these different funding sources, the outreach, and meeting the needs of those who are who are being, the goal is to serve as far as the homeless, that there is no ongoing feedback from the clients, from those who are homeless, monitoring of the services in a way that allows for outside observation, and also a voice for the clients who are homeless to be able to speak up on the success of these fundings. And also with some of the funded programs, we had complications this year, and I want to bring up the fact that project off-ramps and these targeted encampment projects have complicated the goals that are in these things because of the fact that there are people who've been wanting, who are vulnerable, who have not been able to get into housing, into these shelters that the outreach teams are going out to because of these targeted areas, and that some of the people in those targeted areas, the services and the housing was not the safest for them. We have people who are, like we mentioned, that where the shelters are unsafe for them or it does not meet the needs, and that the housing there's no allowances for that. I know that they were mentioned high acuity camps and other needs. So I ask that you continue. Brian mentioned that we need to have comprehensive evaluation of these, but also comprehensive documentation of those who are being helped to understand, like I said this morning, the reasonings behind the people's responses to services and the weaknesses, but also comprehensive understanding of the needs of the people who are helping, which would be better helped if people could just walk in, because we have people who deal with different traumas, those who are trying to get clean, that are being placed in areas where they're with people that make them unsafe or in areas that make them unsafe. I see that as with these wonderful programs, without these dynamics, without better understanding the needs of those
You could wrap up, Ms. Villegas.
that this would be a potential weakness, and and further things that be noted that we need to have better observation of evaluation of from a client-centered perspective.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Villegas. Anybody else punched up to speak? City Clerk?
Yes, we have Stephen Ayala
Ayala.
and Des Martinez.
Okay, Mr. Ayala, you'll have 3 minutes.
Hello?
Go ahead, sir. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, yes. Is this the time for me to speak about the PLA in Fresno?
No, not yet, sir. We're not on that item.
Oh,
This
okay.
is the other one. If you want to
Okay.
wait and sit
All right.
tight.
Yes, I'll wait.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Next speaker was Ms. Des Martinez. Ms. Martinez, you'll have 3 minutes.
Hello, thank you. I just need to get an understanding of where I can find information on our outreach teams that are receiving fundings through the state, the county, or the city. Because in the past 8 months, we've had Paparillo Outreach Team only transport individuals for Project Off-Ramp. I thought that the outreach team was supposed to be for everybody in Fresno and not just for one specific project. This prevents and holds up Paparillo Outreach Team from going out and making contact with several individuals that are in our alleys outside of our schools and on city streets. I don't believe that anybody should be receiving money if they're only going to be outreaching for one specific project. I think it should be for all. This money comes from the city, so therefore it should be for everyone in the city to be able to utilize the services of the Paparillo Outreach Team. And also in the past, during the past year, they did make comments and have said that they will not help anybody if I show up. I am an advocate. If I show up for my street family members and I'm there to advocate for them and make sure everything is okay, the Paparillo team should not be getting back in their van and leaving the individuals right there, which they have done, which they did at Rodine Park. So again, if there's any way I can find out if they're only specifically for Project Off-Ramp or whatever Dyer's project is going on, how do we get another outreach team to get funding so they can hit the people that Paparillo Outreach Team is not hitting? And we should never pay an outreach team for only specifically one person's project. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Martinez. That concludes our public comment. I will now close that portion up. Motion was made by Councilmember Arias and seconded by, I believe, Councilmember Maxwell. Any opposition? None. Motion carries. Let's
Council
go on
President,
to,
if I may,
yes.
thank you, Karen, for being patient and working with the CDBG committee. It's the first time in a couple of years I felt really comfortable with the quality of information that we're receiving and the responsiveness of your team. So thank you, Director Clark and Karen.
Let's record those. It's not every day that Councilmember Arias says thank you to staff. So, all right, let's go on to a less controversial item. Let's go on to the special meeting, the PLA veto override. I know, City Manager, you had some brief comments to make. I think we've had a pretty thorough discussion over a 6-month negotiation. So,
Point of order, Council
Yes.
President.
Vice President?
I'd like to hear from the public, open up public comment. But I think unless there's something new to be said, I'd like to eliminate discussion on this particular item since we rehashed it at the last meeting. I'd like to make that motion.
City Attorney, what would be the procedural motion for that?
So we have to hear from the public.
Right.
So the motion is to limit debate. That can be done with a vote of 5 members of the council.
Okay. So you don't want anybody to speak on it from the item, Councilmember?
I mean, if there's a member that's going to flip positions, I'd love to hear that. But otherwise, we're just
Well,
going to...
I might be willing to, but so I'd like to talk about it.
Council, you can't make the decision based upon the content of what somebody would say.
How about this? Let's have an agreement.
Wait. All right, never mind.
We'll keep the comments
I want to
short.
see this. Never mind. All right. Let's hear from Gary.
Who called the question?
No question.
I withdrew my motion because I want to.
All right, City Manager, let's hear your brief comments. And then it'll be followed by radio silence over here.
Okay, good.
And a vote.
City Manager, city reminder, decorum applies, so
totally.
no craziness.
Totally. It's all data.
Asking somebody to avoid
Run by
craziness
data.
is pretty hilarious today.
I think I'll start.
Wait, I'm sorry, point of order. Was there a motion to limit
No
debate?
motion. There was no motion.
Yeah,
We're
I
not
make a
voting
motion to
on it.
limit debate.
You make the motion?
I'm making the motion to call the
debate?
question.
All right.
Okay.
Well,
But he'll second that.
I'll second it.
What do you want to
All right.
limit it to?
Call the question.
So just vote.
Just vote.
Listen to the public. Okay, procedurally, we have to take a vote now since the motion
Well,
was made in a second.
can I speak on that or no?
If there's a motion and a second, yes, you should hear that motion.
Yep.
But nonetheless, the public will still be allowed
Absolutely.
to comment.
Absolutely.
yes.
We'll
But
do
we
it.
can discuss the motion, right?
You can discuss the motion.
Okay.
You want to discuss the motion?
I might change my vote. I don't know.
All right. So, are we discussing my motion, or are we discussing Mike's motion, or are we voting on it?
Motion was made by Councilmember Carbasi to limit comment.
Right.
And it was seconded by Vice President Esparza. So let's vote on that.
My motion was to call the question, which I believe means we vote on that, and if we get 60% or whatever, or 2/3, then we go to the question at hand, but the public still gets to comment. Is that correct?
City Attorney.
Your motion is effectively a motion to limit debate.
Correct.
And the limitation is no council member comments, correct?
Correct. Just
You
go to
still
a
have
vote.
to hear from the public, even if that motion
or-
passes.
Always hear from the public, of
Or
course.
city manager comments. Just it's a dais
Can
altogether.
we present ourselves as the public then? I mean, that's what we do. We represent the public.
If you
Can
wanna
we
get off
just
the dais,
punch up and
maybe.
go over and go stand right there?
Yes, you are public too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you want to pop
Do it
off,
how-
then
yep. I'm ready to go up there. You want me to do that now?
No, City
Not
Manager.
yet, not yet, not yet.
We're not going to make you go down there.
The
You can
motion is
speak.
under consideration first.
Okay,
Right.
so do we take a vote, City Attorney?
Well, first
On that?
we have debate on it, right?
You may discuss the motion and
Right.
vote on the motion.
Okay,
Is it just
Councilmember
a motion
Bredeville,
that
do you
we
want to
can
get in
discuss right now?
your words now before
Yes.
the window closes? Go ahead, Councilmember Bredeville.
No, I'm going to oppose this motion, obviously, because anybody should be able to speak on this issue, even though we've discussed it before. I think anybody here should be able to say, hey, I oppose it or I support it for whatever reason. I mean, I understand we've had the debate. The city manager is going to be allowed, I guess, to speak. We ought to allow the city manager to speak. If the mayor wants to speak, we'll even let the mayor speak.
Sure.
So I'm going to oppose the motion because I don't think we should be limiting debate.
All right, any more discussion on that specific motion?
I'll just reiterate my last point that we do discuss issues up here regularly and they reoccur, but this one was just 2 weeks ago, so I feel pretty comfortable just moving on to the question. So
Yeah.
that's why I backed the motion.
Let me just put it this way. Your point is well taken, and the public can comment. If something new is coming up, I totally get it, but after the day we had today, I think it might be more prudent to limit just the discussion. I don't think anything's going to change, but that's just my take. And I think the mayor's statement already made it very clear where he stands on this issue.
I call the question.
All right, let's vote. Let's do a roll call vote on that, City Clerk, so on the motion to, Councilmember Carbasi's motion to limit to nobody speaking, except members of the public, and then vote. So, roll call vote.
Councilmember Soria? Councilmember Carbasi?
Yes.
Councilmember Arias?
Yes.
Councilmember Maxwell?
Aye.
Councilmember Bredefeld?
No.
Council Vice President Esparza.
Aye.
President Chavez.
Yes. All right, we go. Now let's go out to the public. City manager, where's the public?
Ready. Tommy Escueda. I live in District 4, 3069 North
Thank you for that,
Applegate.
City Hall.
Proud resident
2600.
of City of Fresno. So my comments today really aren't to the City Council. We know where you guys are. It's really more to the residents, the local contractors, and the employees of the city. Today's action will do three things. It's in the document. You can read it. It's going to provide a labor monopoly to the building council and allow the building council to dictate construction bidding policy to the city of Fresno. We have the data. It's going to go backward on hiring local workers for city projects. We have data. It's going to go backward on hiring local contractors for city projects. This is what the action today will do, and I'm sharing this with the other residents that live in the city. To be clear, this is not speculation. This is not Chicken Little, sky is falling. We have data to compare the performance of the building council in the city of Fresno. Mano a mano, we've competed with them. The building council was gifted a PLA for the airport structure by the city council. Very, very simple project. It's the kind of project that third-year engineering students learn how to design in concrete, reinforced concrete. Put a column in, put a beam in, put a network together, and tie it together with slabs. Easy, easy project. But even with that simplest of projects, the building council could not match the performance of Scott Mosier and Mike Carbajal to hire local workers and hire local contractors. Great job, Mike. Great job, Scott. To be clear, when Scott and Mike bid construction projects, they hire more local workers and more local contractors than the building council. Not speculation, we have the data. So when the city controls the bidding process, approximately 2/3 of all hours worked on the projects are performed by local workers in the area. When the building council controls the bidding process, only a half of the hours are worked by local people. Score for local hire, Mike and Scott, 66%, building council, 50%. When the city controls the construction bidding process, approximately 1/3 of all hours are worked by workers outside the local area, people that aren't from the city. When the building council controls the process, half of the workers come from outside the local area. We know this, and we're seeing it happen. So score for non-local hire, Mike and Scott, 1/3, building council, 50%. This is what we would expect. Seeing this amount of outside labor coming in on projects is what we would expect when you limit the ability of local contractors to bid. 50% of the hours on the airport coming from outside the local area. So, not speculation, we're seeing it happen right here in front of us right now. We're watching this occur. We're bringing in people from outside the area. And we're saying, well, that's okay. So how does the council reward the outstanding efforts of Scott and Mike to hire more local workers and local contractors in the building council? Council has elected to remove Scott and Mike from the equation and provide the labor monopoly to the building council and allow the building council to dictate construction bidding policy to the city. To Mike and Scott and all of the employees you use to bring forward projects for bidding and construction, I'm extremely proud of you. You guys have done an amazing job. I'm very, very proud of your ability to hire more local people and local contractors for our jobs. Unfortunately, your only mistake was being too good at your job, making the building council look bad. I think of this in terms of a youth sports.
City
One
Manager,
team is crushing.
I hate to be rude, but your 2 minutes is up. For the public.
Hey, Vice President, I'm running the meeting here. I'm going to give them some time, let them wrap up, and then we can move on.
So everyone gets unlimited time?
No, I have the discretion.
Fair enough.
So, there's youth sports, and we were seeing this disparity in numbers. We'd call the mercy rule, and we'd accept the whipping. But the building council is expecting special legislation to eliminate competition, to get Mike and Scott out of the way. Building council can't be competitive in an open bidding environment against Mike and Scott. We have the data to prove it. So you can't win by the rules, change the rules. So to provide full transparency, here's how we're going to implement this. On the bid form, we're going to add a new line item that will say PLA compliance costs. So everybody can see when we show up here to award contracts, how many dollars are being allocated to comply with the PLA. Second, we're going to add a new form to the construction documents, local contractor no bid form. This will be a form that local contractors will submit on bid day, indicating they did not submit a bid because of the additional administrative and personnel costs required by the PLA. So when we come to council with you for awarding projects, we're going to tell you on this bid day, we received this many bids, this many dollars were required to go to the union, to the Building Trades Council, and this many contractors didn't bid on the project because of the PLA. So everybody can know what the impact of this was on all of us. Been doing this a long time, big cities around the country. First time in my career I've ever seen a city council adopt a policy that says let's go backward on hiring local workers and hiring local contractors. Never seen it before, but here we are, going to do that today. So I want to thank you guys for letting me have the opportunity to speak. Thank you for the opportunity to participate in the negotiations. That concludes my comments for this agenda item. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
I have some
Esqueda.
questions. Tommy, I have some questions.
The city attorney, do we get to ask questions from the dais?
The motion earlier did not eliminate questions, and the council rules specifically provide that council members may ask members of the public
So you
questions.
could ask your question, Councilmember Bredeville. Technicality.
So,
Dang.
you tried. So you're saying the building council doesn't hire as many local people here as we do? And I think you said 50 to...
50%. 50%
versus 30.
versus 30%.
Do you have any sense of what that equates to in terms of, I know it's project by project, but what that would mean in terms of local hires that would not get hired?
We don't have that number. We can just tell you that on any job that's going to come through here, what you're seeing at the airport is what you're going to see on the projects. Half the labor is going to come from outside the city just because the local guys can't compete and use their local staff. And so part of what we'll do is we're going to monitor this, and we're going to bring that data to you each time we bring a bid recommendation to you, and we'll just say, here's where they are in the process, here's where they are in their numbers, and I don't think they're going to change. I think Scott and Mike are still going to be the dominant players in how they produce local hire and local contractors.
And you said you were going to put in a document for people who won't bid on, well, how do you know you'll get people who care enough to fill out that document?
We'll find out. I mean, this is inciting a lot of energy in the local contractor community. I suspect people who are not, and again, you can see it happen on the airport. 50% of the labor is coming from outside the area. Local guys didn't bid it, so those people who didn't bid it, they're going to submit the no bid form.
So let me ask you something. When this was going on with the PLA, where were the non-union contractors coming to this council and speaking up and saying, this is going to hurt us? I didn't hear that. I didn't see the email. I mean, I've seen now, following the approval of the PLA.
Yeah, I can't speak for where they were on it. Again, this is my background. I was focused on City of Fresno and how we were going to do it, and I saw it playing out, and then I got the data for the airport. I'm going, yep, that's what I would expect.
Okay, and you said, Tommy, you've been very experienced in this. You've never seen a city council do something like this, city council.
No, not go backwards. Not when you have a staff that's making 2/3 of every hour a local hire, and then say, you know what, we're going to go back to 50%. Never seen that. Never, ever.
Where you hired 2/3 local, and now we're going to 50% local.
Yeah, that's what you're seeing
That's
at the
what
airport.
this will result in.
Yeah, and again, it's not speculation. It's not speculation. The data is there on a simple project. It's concrete, steel, and formwork. It doesn't get any simpler than that.
So why would we do this?
I don't know. It's not evident to me why we would do it. It's not evident to me. Because again, Mike and Scott are hiring more local workers than the building council. We have the data. We can look at it.
Mayor, do you have any comments on
Thank
this?
you.
Thank you, Tommy.
Yeah, go ahead, man.
You're part of the public, otherwise you couldn't speak.
Mr. Dyer, for that record, what's your address?
What district do you live in, Mr. Dyer?
I would give you my address, but I'd have protesters out there by midnight.
Join the club.
You know, I did want to address the council. I wanted all of you to know I did not put forth a veto without a lot of thought, recognizing that there was a 6-1 vote on the part of this council, which I know is very difficult to have a overturn. And so, but I do believe this is a well-intentioned project labor agreement. It was well-intentioned. However, there are negative consequences. And I believe that with all of my heart. And those negative consequences, I believe, are going to be to the city of Fresno residents who happen to work in the construction trade who are non-union. And I also believe there's going to be a negative impact on local businesses, contractors within the city of Fresno. And that is why I vetoed this particular document. I believe it's going to make it more difficult for City of Fresno residents to gain employment. I really do. And when you consider the fact that union membership's 13% of the workforce in construction and about 87% is non-union on a national basis, I think we have a potential to negatively impact a lot of non-union people. And I believe it's going to, as I said, make it much more difficult for local contractors who are in fact awarded a city contract to use their full complement of employees that they have working for them. And that's as a result of the core worker provision within the PLA, which does require contractors to utilize a certain number of union employees on that job site. And these contractors would be 100% responsible for the work performance of those union employees that they did not hire. And that one is a challenge for me. They would be 100% responsible for the job they perform without having the ability to hire them. And I'm going to skip down into this part that I think is the most, really the most important for me. To the last two areas. Under the PLA, non-union employees who work for the non-union local contractor are required to pay into union pension and a health benefit system, even though they already pay into their own health insurance and their own pension system or 401k, meaning they're having to pay twice. And what that means is when a local contractor does that, it can drive up the contract cost as much as 5 to 10%, which puts them at a disadvantage when they're bidding that particular contract. So it doesn't keep the level playing field. And so this is the bottom line. If I am a City of Fresno contractor, headquartered in Fresno, City of Fresno, and I hire 100% City of Fresno employees to work on a city job, and I pay my employees a pension system, 401k, and health benefits, and I have apprentices on my ability to hire apprentices that work for me, and I get awarded a City of Fresno job, I can only use 50% of my employees per trade. And the other 50% at least come from a trade. In fact, the maximum I can use on that job per trade is five people. So if there's 15 people that's going to be utilized for a particular trade, I use 5 of my people, and I have to use 5 from a union and pay into twice health insurance and twice into a pension system. And so what I'm asking this council to reconsider, I really am. And I want you to know I entered into this with an open mind. I believe a PLA can be beneficial to the city of Fresno. However, what I'm asking for is the following exemption in this PLA. That the business contractor awarded the contract, if they are headquartered in the city of Fresno, if all the employees who work on the city project live within the city of Fresno, if the employees assigned to the project be provided health care coverage and 401k or other retirement benefit by the contractor, and at a minimum 20% of those assigned to the project by trade be apprentices living within the city of Fresno, that those local contractors be exempted from the PLA, and that we write that into the PLA language. And the reason we can't do it outside of the PLA, like initially there was conversation, and I have checked, it's because we would in fact violate the PLA contract. So we can't do it outside. We have to put language in specifically in the PLA that says there is an exemption for local contractors who meet these criteria. And so that's what I'm asking the council to consider. And again, this has really nothing to do with the unions. I've been a union paid member for 41 years and still pay. This is really about trying to help or make sure that we're taking care of our local businesses and local employees who live in the city of Fresno. So thank you very much.
Councilmember Bredeville?
Yes, just, Mayor. So, I hear Tommy's arguments very persuasive to me. I mean, you're a politician, I know. I think so. Why would the council do this? I don't understand. It hurts our local Fresnans.
Councilmember Bredeville, I think the council has already spoken and said why they did the things it did. I don't think the mayor's in a position to answer that question for any of us. We spoke pretty clearly last council meeting.
And I'll say it. I think it's well intentioned. And quite frankly, it wasn't until I really started diving into this and reading it and understanding it and what the impact was. I learned more about it now after the fact than I knew before. But I had to, sit down and ask questions of this. I mean, those things, that criteria I gave you, if I'm a local business, local employees, I still have to go outside? Yes. And hire a union? No. So in my opinion, it well-intentioned, but some unintended consequences that would be negative.
Okay, I appreciate that. And I just want to say, Tommy, I appreciate your passion on this issue and the fact that you have stood up. I mean, I think you've been a great public servant in terms of defending our constituent base, all of them. And this, I do believe, setting a policy, and I've supported PLAs in the past, but setting this as a policy is the wrong way to go. And you've outlined it very clearly. So anyway, thank you.
All right, any more questions? Councilmember Carbasi, do you have any questions?
I do. This is for the city manager. So you don't have to go over there, though. So Tommy, you kind of remind me of myself. I know when you get really passionate, when you strongly believe in something, I get that same feeling you have right now. We don't agree on this issue. I respect that passion. I'm going to ask a couple of questions so you can help me kind of understand it. What were the three things you were going to do? You said you're going to change a couple things.
Yeah, we're gonna just full transparency, new
Right.
policy. We want to make sure everybody's understanding it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add within the bid form, because right now in the bid form, depending on how big the project is, we ask contractors to list your unit cost or your total cost for 18 things, 20 things, whatever it is. A new line item will be added that will be said, what is the cost of PLA compliance for this that you are proposing or you need for this project? So $1,000, $100,000, whatever, they're going to put a number there so that everybody knows this is what it cost for this contract to comply with this requirement, to do the things that the mayor indicated, do the double payment and do those things. So that's the first thing. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to add a new form to the construction documents. So the construction documents have a lot of different pieces, non-collusion affidavits, sureties, bonds, all those things. So a new form will be one that's called local contractor no bid form. So contractors will get the project, they buy the plan sets, they go through them, they start figuring out what do they want to do. When they look at the PLA requirements and they determine I just can't be competitive, we will then allow them to submit the bid form saying that they're issuing a no bid because of the PLA compliance requirements.
Okay. Now, that's a policy, but isn't the council the policy-making body? So did the council say this is what we're going to do?
No, that's the execution of the construction documents. That's our job, is to execute prepare the construction documents, administer the bids, administer the construction activities. So we work with the city attorney's office to put those documents together.
How many years did we have a ban on PLAs in Fresno?
Oh,
I know it's before my time as well.
Yeah,
Do we know that?
Since about 2002, I think.
Because the question I have is, where was labor when this city chose to have a discriminatory policy banning PLAs? I'm just curious, because I think someone asked the question earlier.
I was actually here when the PLA ban, and labor was, actually Councilmember Bredeville was as well. Labor was here. It was a very packed chamber, contentious. It was It was pretty awful. People had to be escorted out to their vehicles. There were tire slash. I don't know whose side
boy.
did what.
Right.
It was very, very ugly and contentious. So both sides were very loud and present at the time.
Well, that's not good, unfortunately, these divisive things. But the thing is, we have people saying it's unfair, but they weren't saying it was unfair back then, some of these same people. And that's the issue I'm trying to understand. Okay, so I didn't have the luxury because of the Brown Act, which is a good thing. Being on the negotiation team, it was 3 colleagues in the council, and then yourself, staff, and then folks from labor. So the hard thing for me is I have to use the information I have. It looks to me, how many months was the negotiation?
6.
Okay. See, you guys had a say in shaping this policy, and then now to disown it and say, oh, we're not going to do this, that's the concern I have.
So you made, the first statement you said was correct. You weren't there.
I wasn't.
Right. And so
Right.
these statements we're making, we made them the first day. The first day we showed up, we said, hey, here's the data. Why are we doing this? We're already outperforming the airport contract. What is it we want to accomplish with this that we're already not accomplishing? Mike and Scott are smoking it on local hire and local contractor participation. And then we saw the airport data and we're like, well, heck, they're doing worse than us. So, and we asked, why are we doing this? And then the local contractor exemption's always been there. The core worker issue's always been there. The off-ramp's always been there. So you're correct. You weren't there, but these things were on day one.
Right.
And we knew we were outvoted. We were told they allowed us to be in the room as a courtesy. Right. We were told that.
To your point, to be fair, if the numbers are showing that, how are we going to have local skilled labor if we don't have enough jobs or apprentices or pre-apprentices for them to get to that point? Maybe that's the whole point of needing a PLA, so we can train another generation of skilled local labor so that we can export labor rather than having to constantly import labor.
So Mike and
we have to start somewhere.
Yeah, so Mike and Scott are doing that. They're hiring more local people.
What I'm talking about, so for me, what was really impactful for me is, look, I'm very, very tough on crime. I'm very big about victims. But we've got to do something about poverty in our community and recidivism. I get it. It's a very big picture. But this is actually an avenue for someone who's made a lot of mistakes and done their time. I've witnessed it myself. To have a support group and come out and actually, it's about the economy, have a pathway to a livelihood.
Yeah,
and the apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship programs workforce readiness has done that.
Yeah, but I'm just, so Mike and Scott are hiring 66% local.
Mm-hmm.
So they're delivering 66% of the labor's local, doing all things. They're apprentices, they're journeymen, they're all those. They're
Right.
delivering those people because you have to have those people on the job. The building council is delivering 50%.
What I'm talking about is you're comparing apples to oranges. The quality of labor you have in the building council is a very high quality of labor and type of training they have that I haven't seen before. I could not go become a plumber. I couldn't do it.
Yeah,
I went to business school. I can do that, but that's a whole different area.
Yeah, it's hard for me to distinguish between the quality of a union and non-union labor because I've worked with both across the country, and all the projects come out great. So I'm not going to judge whether it's. Again, this is not a union, non-union. That's not what it's about. This is an agreement that you're going to grant a monopoly on the labor to this group when Scott and
We
Mike
had a monopoly before against labor. That's my frustration, and nothing's really changed in terms of poverty in this community. It's gotten worse. Last thing I'm going to say, on a separate issue which is being connected to this, we do have a problem with local preference. We've talked about that since I've been on this council. We've talked about it before. We have 120 days. There are things we have to do to see how we can work on the other issue of making sure we hire local vendors, people that are headquartered here. So I don't want folks thinking that we're going to ignore them. We're talking about 16% of contracts right now for the last year that would apply to a PLA. So we're going to work on that as well. That's not done.
So can we add, because I keep hearing that number, can we add that language to the PLA? When we get to 16% of the construction projects, we're done. Because I keep hearing that. So let's just say when we get to 16, because you don't know what it's going to be. You just don't know what the percentage is going to be. So to make this blanket statement that over the next 5 years only 16%, that's a tough.
I'm done. Thank you.
Yeah, we do, because we're seeing it playing out in front of us. You're at the airport PLA. You're
Council
seeing
President,
it play out in front of you.
Yeah.
I have one question for the legal counsel. if I may.
One question.
Legal counsel, the city manager outlined some additional documents that he's going to create as part of the application process or bidding process. Does the council have the ability to also require campaign contribution disclosures for any bidder of any construction project, whether it's to the mayor or to the foundation controlled by the mayor?
Campaign contributions to any office for the city?
And foundations related to the city?
We would have to
officials?
look at that. I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay, thank you.
I like that
All
idea.
right, all right. So, city manager, this is the last question that I think you're going to get today. How many change orders has the city of Fresno had in the last 6 months for construction contracts that we've had?
We'll have to go back through the agenda items, but change orders happen. You had one today
So-
on an unforeseen condition. You had
So
one
we've
today.
had a lot of change orders, right, with the system that we had been using.
Okay, so
in the
just
past.
it's hard. Again, I'm not making an airport parking structure is a little bit more than a Lego set. So to compare a $162 million water plant that came in on time, under budget,
I
with
totally
a
understand
parking
that.
structure, that is totally different.
And city manager, we're having a conversation out here, and I just asked you that question, and here's the reality, because there were a lot of things said from the podium that I know we limited debate, but I just know that it's not accurate, and here's the main one. We know that because our own contracts are coming 10 to 15% over. Why? Because everybody is working right now. The city of Fresno is not going to be turning away people. They're not going to be out of work. They're working. Everybody is working right now. I don't think that's going to be a problem for the next 5 years.
Yep.
And here we
The
are.
cost
having a
issues are more
discussion
driven
about-
by supply chain. So
Right?
just so we're clear.
Absolutely. The private sector right now is booming. The construction trades are booming. What we're trying to create is a pipeline for a workforce development program. Yes, it has a cost. Yes, it has an investment amount tied to it. But that's the comfort level that we have here on a policy conversation. You're the manager. Like, we understand that. But the policy context of this is creating that pipeline.
Yeah, that's
it.
You guys keep saying the pipeline, but Scott and Mike are delivering a pipeline that's delivering 66% local labor. The building trades are delivering a pipeline that's delivering 50%.
What is the number of actual journeymen that are coming out of all these projects that you're claiming that it's great, it's local labor, but the goal is, as Council President just stated, is to create that future workforce. And in order to create that future workforce, we need particular slots. And right now, the apprentice programs that exist in our city that are targeting the homeless, that are targeting foster care, that are targeting disadvantaged zip code folks, is the building trades. There is no other, you can't show me one other apprentice program that actually is doing that in a very intentional way. This is much more, this is what the specific, at least for me, why this PLA is so critical.
Yeah,
And that's for me. And so I think that we're going to continue to work on the local workforce component. We have a lot to do with the local preference, even ordinance that is right now super weak. It's weak.
All right. I think we've questioned it out. We beat the dead horse. We resuscitated it, and now we're beating the dead horse.
Now we're at glue.
again. So let's actually hear from the public. City Clerk, I believe we have Mr. Steven Ayala queued up first. Mr. Ayala, you'll have 2 minutes.
Hello?
Mr. Ayala, you have 2 minutes, sir.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay, yes. Thank you. Thank you for your time, Council President and also members. And it's also see Jerry Dyer speak his piece on the issue. I completely agree with him. My name's Steven Ayala. I'm a Fresno resident, Tower District. I'm a construction worker. I graduated from an apprenticeship program for a construction laborer. And I went back to school. I went back into the apprenticeship. Now I am an apprentice again to become a plumber. I'm actually at work right now. I've had this earpiece in my ear all day, and I just want to just first thank Jerry Dyer for vetoing that, and I agree with all the points that he said. I mean, he's read the paperwork, and I haven't, but I agree with him, and I just want to ask the City Council just to please reconsider, because I am not union. I am not union, but I've found my apprenticeship and I've worked plenty of jobs here in Fresno. So I'm an apprenticeship. I did the apprenticeship, I graduated, and now I'm doing plumber. So I'm actually out here working in Fresno on city jobs, and my life's good. I just bought my house last year. I'm a Fresno resident. Miguel Arias, you're a District 3. I ask you, to reconsider. It's really going to affect me. It really is. It's going to affect me working here and building Fresno back. Please reconsider. And a lot of people don't get into the politics of it. They don't see it. They don't hear it. They're just out here working. But I've been through the apprenticeship, and I've seen a little bit of how this goes. And I know enough to know that it's going to affect me directly. It's really going to affect me directly working here in Fresno. I live here in Fresno. I love Fresno, and I want to build and work here in Fresno. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up is Mr. Joe Lubas. Mr. Lubas, you'll have 2 minutes. If you could unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you, sir. Go ahead.
All right, yeah. My name is Joe Lubas. I'm actually reading something on behalf of Emilio Mata, who's an apprentice as well. So I will be reading on behalf of Emilio Mata. My name is Emilio Mata. I am a fourth-year apprentice through ABC NorCal and have been lucky enough to work in or around my city for the majority of my apprenticeship. I've been able to have 2 kids in the time and just recently bought a house with my fiance. It's been a blessing to go to work and go home each day and be able to see my children when I get there. This PLA that Mayor Jerry Dyer has vetoed will continue to do that for me and many other workers and companies in the city. We want to be able to work and build this city of Fresno and enjoy the fruits of our labor and be amazed of the hard work we put into every project as we pass by them through our city freeways and remember the good, bad, and more importantly, the teachings we've received on those projects. If we don't veto this PLA agreement, there will be companies that are not from our city taking those amazing jobs that people in the city of Fresno want. In my opinion, it is not fair for that to happen, especially when we pay taxes for our city and state as well, and to not be able to work locally on those great projects that will help further successes for our local employers and our families. As a merit worker, I'm going through the same apprenticeship requirements and union shops do, which doesn't make us any less than they are, which doesn't make any sense as a local of Fresno. To give jobs to union shops that aren't from here when I can do this same exact work. Let us build our Fresno and our surrounding cities with pride, making whatever projects that come perfect.
All right, thank you for that. Next speaker is Mr. Richard Markison. Mr. Markison, you'll have 2 minutes, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon, President Chavez, members of the council, and city staff. I'm Richard Markison for the Western Electrical Contractors Association. Councilmember Soria, you talked about the pipeline for new construction workers. Well, as I mentioned to you on a previous call, WECA recently opened a 12,000 square foot training facility in Councilmember Carbassi's district, and this PLA will close the door on all 89 of those apprentices because only union indentured apprentices will be able to work on covered city projects. I explained to you earlier that the population is 43% Fresno residents, 36% of them are Hispanic, 17% are API, and 6% are African American. And Council Member Carbassi, you mentioned about creating new jobs. Well, Public Works Code mandates that the city use apprentices in an approximately 5-to-1 ratio. For every 5 hours of journey level work, contractors are required by state law to use 1 hour of apprenticeship labor. And you also mentioned that the PLA ban that the city overturned recently. I would remind you that the PLA ban did not prohibit union contractors or union construction workers from working in the city or on city projects. What the PLA does do that you are about to adopt is it discourages non-union contractors. It prohibits non-union apprentices, and it imposes burdens on non-union journey workers. Councilmember Arias, you suggested that perhaps contractors disclose contributions to the mayor or other members. I would also encourage you, if you proceed with that.
If you could wrap up, Mr. Markison.
You bet. That you also require that construction unions, such as members of the Building Trades Council, are required to disclose contributions to members of the City Council. You will be closing the door on all 89 of the week apprentices when you adopt this project labor agreement. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Markison. All right, next up is Ms. Rosa Treviso. Ms. Treviso, you'll have 2 minutes.
Good afternoon, members of the Fresno City Council. My name is Rosa Treviso, and I'm here on behalf of AGC to ask that the council reject this motion so that the council can work on several technical aspects that are problematic for local contractors. If this is approved as written today, the council will not be able to make substantive changes for the next 5 years unless the other signatory parties agree. Our local contractors are committed to helping the city build on time and on budget projects that don't compromise design or safety. However, this agreement as written is going to be very challenging for local contractors to meet, especially when some of the provisions hold contractors to the same standard as large contractors in large cities who have access to a greater pool of resources. We have written letters and submitted them to the council and expressed our concerns. But again, on top of what we have mentioned, we have serious concerns about the administration of the PLA. It isn't clear on many aspects how documents are submitted and kept, by which entity, and who enforces what, and how the process is resolved. Number 2, off-site prefabricated work being included. There isn't a pool of available off-site prefabrication in the Fresno area that will agree to the terms and a favorable price to local contractors. The third would be core worker provisions. The core worker provisions outlined are some of the most stringent in the state, with a requirement for the contractor to reduce their core workers in certain circumstances. The fourth being local hire. There simply isn't the local available workforce to meet some of this. The fifth would be an exemption for local Fresno businesses. This just goes to what the city council is trying to do. Throughout this entire process, the council has stated keeping local businesses working on projects and getting local workers on the job. And the last would be an off-ramp should bids come in too high. The Fresno Airport PLA has this, so it's unclear why this agreement would not put in this protection for the citywide PLA. Again, we asked for the reasons stated that the council reject this veto override and go back to this agreement for something more agreeable to local contractors.
Thank you, Ms. Treviso. All right, we got 2 last speakers, Ms. Lisa Flores, and then followed by Nicole Goring. Ms. Flores, you'll have 2 minutes.
Good afternoon. Once again, just to remind everybody, I am a retired union president. Some of the things that Jerry Dyer spoke about, I want to address. He talked about a 401k pension. If you want to talk about pensions, I would change that language to definitely a defined benefit retirement, so they're not playing Russian roulette with their 401ks. And also, too, the 50% outside hires. Well, if you open it up back up, I would highly recommend you guys drop that down to 25%. Fresno needs to decide whether they're a union town or not. And I would like to see Fresno a union town, because with a union, you stabilize wages go high, get higher. Benefit packages exist. Quality of life, home ownership goes up. I look at this PLA, and I see it as part of a development of a pipeline to not only keep jobs in the community, but also to keep those individuals that are trained in the community versus going somewhere else. So do what you will with it, but if you open it back up, I want to see it, lower, 25%, a defined retirement benefit added to it. And Tommy, sometimes a construction project is a construction project. And you show me a construction project without a change order or a minor cost overrun, and I'll show you a project that probably never got built. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Last speaker is Ms. Nicole Goring. Ms. Goring, you'll have 2 minutes. If you could unmute yourself, please. Do we lose her, City Clerk? She's on?
Can you hear me?
Yes, you don't sound like
I don't know why I'm
Ms.
coming
Nicole.
across as Nicole Goring, but I'm not Nicole Goring.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
My name is Joe Garcia, and I'm president of J.I. Garcia Construction. And I would like to thank you, the council, for allowing me to speak. I'd like to direct my first comment to Councilmember Carbasi. Just so you know, my background, I was one of the founding members of the leadership team that basically was successful in gaining a ban on project labor agreement. And one of the misstatements that you did make was that it was discriminatory. Understand the effect of a ban on project labor agreement. Basically, that allowed every company, whether you were union or non-union, to participate. Every apprenticeship program was able to participate. Every worker in the city of Fresno was allowed to participate. There was no discrimination by having the ban. It just opened up for fair and open competition, which is basically what the city leadership should be asking for. Second item is Councilmember Soria. Please understand that we are required when we get a state or city contract to basically petition for apprentices, and we're not just restricted to go to open shop. We also go to the local union hiring halls and petition apprentices from them. And in 39 years of doing public works, I have never received an apprentice from a union shop. Even though the scale is exactly the same, I would be paying exactly the same wages, and I would pay his benefits to the union instead of to him directly like I do my employees. And in that process, if there truly was trying to gain a pipeline of trained employees, the unions would be more than happy to go ahead and send out apprentices, but they don't. And they don't because they basically want to corner this market for themselves, exclude everybody else. And those council members that vote for this discriminatory project labor agreement basically are assisting them in doing so. You've heard from the mayor, you've heard from city manager. These are professionals that are trained at knowing how to produce contracts, how to build projects in the city of Fresno, and they're telling you that this is a bad policy and you guys are ignoring them. And that's just really sad to watch on so many different levels. Last thing I'd like to say is that it's really important to understand that if it's already working, don't fix it. You're already doing better than you would be under a project labor agreement. The numbers don't lie. Everything else apparently does, because everybody believes in stuff that isn't substantiated in any manner, such as that you're helping the middle class. Well, you're not, because the wages are already set. You're hurting the middle class because we're able to be more flexible about paying the benefits to our employees and putting more money in their pockets than their union counterparts. That's why most of the construction industry don't want to be union. It has nothing to do with us holding them back. There's no way legally we can hold them back as an employer. I understand the construction industry, both on the union side and the non-union side. I've tried to reach out to each one of you. Most of you didn't call me back because you don't want to hear the truth about what you guys are doing. And I did say that was the last thing, but I do have one more.
No, your time is up, sir.
Well, last point.
Well, go ahead and wrap up.
Last point, real quick. You have no exit plan. No one in their right mind, especially business people, will ever sign a contract that doesn't have an element of an exit plan. If this thing fails greatly, which it probably will, you have no ability to get out of it. Where is the responsibleness of a council in setting policy by setting a policy that if it backfires on everybody, that you have no out? That makes no sense.
All right,
Thank you very much.
thank you for that. And I think one of my colleagues has a question for you, Mr. Garcia.
Mr. Garcia.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, just this Gary Bredeville, just a question, or for the city manager. There's been talk, or it's been said, that apprentices and journeymen can only come from unions, and we have non-union apprentices, we have non-union journeymen, do we not? And is there not a pipeline for that training that is also non-union, just to talk about being competitive and comparing the same?
So
Is that your question to me or to someone else, Gary?
Either you or the city manager. I don't know if Tommy, did you want to answer?
yeah, so that was one of the, again, Mike wasn't there, but that was one of the items we asked for in the agreement, was take out the word joint and just put local apprentice programs, and we were rejected resoundingly.
Okay, but they exist, correct?
Oh, they exist, yeah, they
Non-union
exist.
apprentices, non-union journeymen, and there is a pipeline of training that's also non-union. And that's what I was asking Mr. Garcia.
Okay. Any other questions? I think we've had Councilman Arias.
And I just want to point out, there's been a lot of misinformation that we are limited because of debate, but there's two critical ones I want to really be real clear about. When the city manager references local hire, he's referencing 25 miles within the city of Fresno. That we're doing an amazing job of awarding contracts to people in Madera, Clovis, hiring those employees. This PLA has local defined as city of Fresno residents. That's just a fact. I don't want to argue with you, city manager. Just want to point that out, that fact for the public. Secondly, this PLA allows non-union and union contractors to bid, non-union and union employees to work in the job. Another fact. So I want the public to understand that some of the things that have been said by the members of the public are just not factual.
City manager.
Yeah, I love that one.
Last
I love that one. So the standard was 25 miles, and we smoked the building council. So you want to change the boundary? You want to change the field, how big the field is? Change how big the field is. We'll smoke them again. But we're going to sit Mike and Scott over there on the sideline and not let them compete. That's the hard part, is that we don't get to compete and show you what we could do. Because at the standard of 25 miles, we beat them. And all we want to do is just, you want to change the size of the field? Change the size of the field. We'll do the same thing.
All right. I think those are all the questions we have, and I as president, I get to say the last word.
Make a motion to limit debate.
So here, you can't. You know why? Because I got this. But here's what I'll say. Within this agreement, there's a quarterly provision to review how the PLA is performing, and then there's a year provision to come back to the city council. So hold that thought. We'll have that conversation, and we'll let the facts speak for themselves.
I hope so. I hope we do. I hope we are sincere about that.
We will. And so with that, I guess I'll make the motion. All right. We'll second the motion by Councilwoman Soria. Any opposition?
I'm opposed.
All right. One opposition. City Clerk, did you get that for the record? Thank you. All right, Council. We have one last item. It's at 3 p.m., but we can't do that till 3 p.m. So, City Attorney, why don't we do some closed session and then just come out? I believe it's just the ratification of the agreement. So let's do closed session and make the announcement, and then we'll come back and vote for that last item.
Okay, remaining closed session, we have existing litigation, the Mccloskey case. Also, labor was canceled. We have public security, and then also public employee performance evaluation on hiring the city clerk.
All right. Do you expect an announcement, City Attorney?
No.
All right. Item 3A, 3 p.m., and it's ratify a Fourth Amendment to contract with UCSF for COVID-19 testing, tracing, quarantine, and vaccination support. City Manager, did you have some information, or Assistant City Manager Barpio?
Council President, I'd like to make a motion.
Yeah, that's what I thought. You're perfect.
So I'll make a motion to approve the contract as submitted with one amendment, that up to $600,000 will be used to provide testing for the unvaccinated on a weekly basis, and the remainder towards the vaccine deployment plan for city employees.
Second that.
All right. The motion's been made.
When you say a
Arias,
vaccine deployment plan, what does that
President.
mean?
It's to vaccinate the employees who are willing and interested in being vaccinated.
So if you want to get vaccinated, we use those dollars.
Correct.
Right.
All right, let me go out to the public. Anybody queued up to speak on this, City Clerk? No. Who do we have up?
We have two, Keith Scott and Lisa Flores.
All right, Mr. Keith Scott, you have 2 minutes, sir.
Hi there. Just wondering, I think, not for this one, but I want to know if there'll be a chance to speak about item 1Q.
Those items have already passed, sir. We've already gone through that item already. This is just for the 3 p.m. item, if you wanted to speak on that.
Oh, I was online all day and I didn't hear anything about that item 1Q.
Yeah, it came up earlier. So we actually
I was
discussed
online
that.
the
and
entire
voted
time.
on them. So,
Really?
yeah. Did you want to speak on this item, the 3A?
No, I was online the entire time and I sent in an email to you as well to be read. And I haven't heard anything about that reading of my email.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for that. Who's the next speaker that wanted to speak on this item, City Clerk? Is it Miss
Lisa Flores.
Miss Lisa Flores. Miss Flores, you'll have 2 minutes. Is she on mute?
Good afternoon. Thank you, President Chavez. Well, I think this is a good thing. Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Go
Yes?
ahead, Miss
Oh,
Flores.
okay.
We can hear you.
Thank you for this opportunity. Okay, well, thank you very much for this opportunity to speak. Of course, I like people being tested, but I really love them getting vaccinated. And I would hope that the city would throw down the mandate that if you want to keep your city job, that you get vaccinated, because that's the only way we're going to beat this thing. You know, I'm on the internet at least 2 or 3 times a day, and the latest thing I saw is we're still in the red of one of the worst areas in California in beating COVID. And the only way we can achieve that is through vaccinations. So I would hope that the city would move beyond vaccination, but with also implementation where if you're not vaccinated, you can't work for the city anymore, because this is not politics. This is public health.
All right. Thank you, Miss Flores. Did we lose her? She's still on?
There's no more public comment.
All right. I'll close that portion of the item, bring it back. Motion was made by Councilmember Arias, but Councilmember Bredeville still has
Yeah, I just want to make sure this $600,000 is for mandatory testing of employees.
Correct.
That's correct.
As part of the manager's order that he did last week, it is requiring that any unvaccinated employee receive a weekly COVID test that's clear before they return to work. So in order for him to implement that plan, we need to fund the resources to UC San Francisco for that portion of the work.
And I understand, I don't support mandatory anything or forcing people to take tests or vaccines, so I'm going to oppose this.
All right.
Councilmember, is this testing and vaccines, both?
Correct. It's $600,000 for testing, which should be, looks like about 30 days worth of testing, and the remainder for vaccine for those who are volunteering to be vaccinated.
I'm sorry to ask for this. I'm going to do that. Can you split it into 2 items?
It's one contract.
I understand, but can you do one vote for testing, one vote for vaccines?
I don't think you can.
Okay.
We're making an amendment to a contract.
All right.
All right. Motion was made, seconded. Any opposition?
I oppose.
All right. 2 oppositions. Motion carries. All right, council. That concludes our council meeting.
Thank you, guys.
all. We'll see you on the 30th. Thank you.